Chapter 174. After going out with the third Master Fong, Zhengtan also learned something. The people in charge of several pet hospitals in Chuhua City were privately discussing the establishment of a cat-loving association. In fact, they had been discussing this for a long time, but they hadn't been able to confirm it. This time, they were able to make the decision mainly because of the 2 cat abuse incidents that happened some time ago, as well as the reactions of the public and the media. If they wanted to establish this association, it was inevitable that they would have to deal with organizations such as the Environmental Protection Association and the Bird Protection Association. After all, the conflict between cats and birds was getting deeper and deeper. The Bird Protection Association in the province had quarreled with several cat-loving organizations. In terms of environmental protection, some plant protection organizations often complained that many stray cats were destroying plants and the ecology. Because of this, when considering the name of the association, several organizers filtered it out and finally decided to use scientific breeding and green civilization as the theme of this event. The name of the association was Green Wing, abbreviated as GW, and the logo was a green wing with a cat's palm in the middle. No matter what the organizers of Green Wing were thinking, at least when Zhengtan first heard the name, he didn't feel that it had anything to do with cats. Among the organizers of this upcoming event, Xiaoguo's pet center was the most influential. In the past 2 years, more and more people knew the name Obviously Pet Center. As one of the organizers and also the vice president of Green Wing, Xiaoguo was so busy that he didn't even have time to eat. Although he wasn't the only one doing the promotional videos, public service announcements, and sending out notices, he had to contribute to everything. Xiaoguo knew that the third Master Fong and the Jiao family knew each other, and Zhengtan was more familiar with the third Master Fong. Therefore, for this event, Xiaoguo had his eyes on the big fish, the third Master Fong. If the third Master Fong could contribute, Xiaoguo's right to speak as the vice president would definitely increase greatly. After all, Green Wing had just been established, and there were several vice presidents. Their authority was temporary, and no one was willing to listen to anyone else. There were also people watching below, waiting for you to make a fool of yourself, so they were all thinking of using this event to show their abilities and secure their positions. Therefore, Xiaoguo personally went to visit the third Master Fong. For Zhengtan's sake, the third Master Fong didn't put on airs and simply accepted Xiaoguo's invitation. He also promised to donate a sum of money. Xiaoguo could talk to one of the third Master Fong's assistants about the specific details. After the third Master Fong finished the business with Old Lu, he mentioned this event. When Old Lu heard this, he thought that the reason his son had become so lively and cheerful was because of cats. Suddenly he was interested. Donating some money was a small matter, and it could be considered spending money to buy peace of mind. Of course, the third Master Fong probably didn't have time to attend the event in person. His subordinates would go on his behalf. However, for Xiaoguo, as long as this person was willing to donate money, it was already the greatest success. The third Master Fong, Old Lu, and Xiaoguo were all busy people. As for Zhengtan, in general there weren't many changes. His days were still quite comfortable, and it wasn't too boring. Every few days he had something to do, and it was still something to earn money. Think about it, which cat could do this and still earn money to support the family? The Jiao Pa was on the other side of the ocean. Every week, he would chat with the Jiao Pa on the chat software to find out what was happening at home. However, the Jiao Pa wasn't there. Sometimes it wasn't convenient to talk about things at the pet center, so the Jiao Ma was the one making the decisions. However, the Jiao Ma didn't have much time. Occasionally, Xiaoguo would send an email to the Jiao Pa when he had some problems with the cat food advertisement that weren't easy to solve. Some time ago, because of the public service advertisement, the Jiao Pa was the one making all the decisions. In fact, Zhengtan was quite famous in a small circle. However, at the request of the Jiao Pa, a lot of information about Zhengtan was kept confidential and very low-key. And this time, Zhengtan didn't have many scenes in the public service advertisement, because his appearance didn't meet the requirements. Compared to other cats, black cats were always mysterious, evil, and domineering. Zhengtan's appearance really didn't make people feel sorry for him. Therefore, in order to achieve the desired effect, Xiaogua chose a few cubs with an advantage in appearance. This kind of appearance was the easiest to arouse people's sympathy, especially for women. Zheng Tan didn't care. He didn't want to act pitiful. However, as a cat with fans, Zheng Tan definitely had to attend the event and wait for Xiaogua's arrangements. No one would associate Zheng Tan with the cats in the Tsinghua University family compound. Because it was the first time Zheng Tan attended such an event, the Jiaoma couldn't do anything else but work on the food. Jiaoma had an invitation from Xiaogua. She would also take the two children there and have a look. She even prepared the camera. Obviously, many customers at the pet center had been informed about this event. If they decided to go, the pet center would give them an admission ticket. Recently, the pet center had put up some advertisements about this event and sent out some tickets. Mao had spent a lot of money at the pet center a few days ago and became a member. Members were notified by a professional. Sounds interesting. Okay, prepare the ticket for me. I'll go and get it tomorrow. After hanging up the phone, Mao took a slender plastic stick and swung it. The front end of the plastic stick was tied with a string, and the other end of the string was tied with a stuffed animal. Mao leaned on the bed and held the stick to play with the cat. It watched the colorful cat jump left and right, running up and down the bed. Daughter, I'll take you to the cat party. The colorful cat, who didn't understand Mao's words, grabbed the stuffed animal and pulled it. The tail of the stuffed animal was bitten off. The location of the Green Wings event was 6 or 7 stops away from Tsinghua University. Public service billboards were set up at 7 bus stops from Xiaogua's pet center to the event location. The funds for this event were all donated by various parties, and even some advertising companies gave a large discount. Zheng Tan was taken behind the scenes by Xiaogua early. He was with a few cats that often filmed advertisements on Xiaogua's side, waiting to be placed in the exhibition area. Those cats looked calm, but Zheng Tan couldn't stay calm. Because including Zheng Tan, the cats were all wearing a small prop, a small green wing that was similar to the logo of the Green Wings Association. It was to represent the image of the pet center. Zheng Tan felt like a group of idiots wearing these wings. But those cats were probably used to being tortured by Xiaogua, so they didn't have much interest in the small wings on their backs. Zheng Tan resisted the urge to tear off the green wings on his back. In the morning, Xiaogua said that he wanted to be an ambassador for the pet center, but Zheng Tan didn't have the slightest interest. Ambassadors could be anyone who wanted to be. It was so annoying. He only hoped that today's event would end soon. In the exhibition area, the cats in the pet center only needed to lie on the big cat tree with the association's name and the pet center's name printed on it. As soon as Zheng Tan was taken out, he stared at the cat carrier at the top of the cat tree. Originally, the first cat to be taken was the representative cat of the pet center, the American Shorthair Prince. It had to be said that Prince's appearance was an advantage, and he looked very strong. But Zheng Tan didn't care. After Prince jumped on the cat carrier, Zheng Tan also jumped on it without waiting for him to pose. This cat tree was custom-made. It was a large model, and each cat carrier could accommodate at least 3 cats lying on it at the same time. Therefore, Zheng Tan didn't feel crowded when he jumped on it. When Prince saw Zheng Tan, he moved to the side, but Zheng Tan didn't make a sound or move his paws. He just looked at him. After a few seconds, Prince pressed his ears and jumped to the cat carrier at the bottom. Then Zheng Tan occupied the highest point of the cat tree by himself, lying on top of it with a sour face. He was not in a good mood, so he looked at everyone with disdain. However, this attitude made people who passed by the cat tree think at the same time. This cat's aura was really strong. Hey brother, what's the background of that black cat? The person who asked the question was an employee of another pet hospital. They often had contact with cats, and they could tell who the leader was from the interactions between the cats. Originally, they thought it was the American Shorthair, but now it seemed that it wasn't the case. The American Shorthair just looked a little domineering, but when the black cat jumped on it, it was obvious who was better. The employee of the Mingming So Pet Center was surprised. You don't know it? It's BC. BC? The person was puzzled. The employee of the pet center didn't say much. He pointed to one of the billboards on the side. It was a cat food advertisement that Zheng Tan had recently filmed. Damn. It's this guy. At the main venue, after several organizers and guests gave their speeches, a series of promotional activities began. This time, the main purpose was to promote the TNR program to the public, so that residents who didn't know about it would have the opportunity to receive relevant education. The so-called TNR was Trap, Neuter, Release, abbreviated as TNR. It was used to replace the management of euthanasia and reduce the number of stray cats and dogs. It used scientific methods to continuously control the breeding of stray cats and dogs, which was also in line with the current popular spirit of humanity. Although the TNR program wasn't perfect, there was a limit to what the association could do. This method was also very controversial. After all, after the TNR program, cats could continue to disturb people, catch birds, and some stray cats and dogs attacking people and livestock. It could only be said that this event tried to let the public have a correct idea of animal breeding, but if they had to abandon them, please abandon them in the TNR area specified by the association. Some well-known companies represented by Shaoguang Group also donated a sum of money to build a stray cat and dog rescue station. This event also received support from the government, and the media was also more active. If it hadn't been for the things that happened a while ago, there might not have been such an effect. There were many people who brought their cats to participate in the event. These pet cats were also familiar with people. Most of them were not afraid of people, and with their owners next to them, they were quite calm. They were only annoyed by a few reporters, so they shrank into their owner's arms. They didn't stretch out their claws like some cats with a slightly worse temper. After all, on this occasion, it was better to have a docile cat. They didn't let the bad-tempered cats come. It was because of this that the event was much smoother. Dad, look, it's BC. Lu Yao pulled old Lu to the exhibition area of the obviously pet center. Because old Lu had told him before, little Lu Yao didn't call out Zheng Tan's cat name in front of many people in the venue. Instead, he called out BC, a slightly famous stage name in the circle. Chapter 175. There was a donation box in each exhibition area. Next to the donation box stood two female employees with cat ears and sweet looks. They had friendly smiles on their faces. After Lu Yao came to the pet center exhibition area, he waved at Zheng Tan, who was lying on the cat support board at the top. Zheng Tan also gave him face and raised his paw to show his appreciation. Lu Yao came prepared that day. After greeting Zheng Tan, he accepted a storage container that looked like a toy car from OL Lu. This is my pocket money. Lu Yao handed the car-shaped money container to the female employee next to the donation box. The opening of the donation box was too small for Lu Yao's car-shaped money container to fit in. The female employee smiled gratefully and received the piggy bank from Lu Yao with both hands. They had a good impression of this kid, and one of the employees wanted to take a picture of this scene. This was a positive example, and they could use it for publicity. No matter how much money was in the piggy bank, it was still the kid's kind intentions. However, old Lu refused, and the employee could not say much. She could only secretly call her boss and ask him to come out and talk. After the donation, the employee who took the money container took out a cat-shaped note. People who came to donate could write their blessings and other things they wanted to say on the note, and then paste it on the wooden board next to the wall. President Fong, don't you have something to do today? Old Lu noticed Fong Xiaokong coming over and smiled. Zheng Tan looked over. Fong Xiaokong did say that he did not have time today, and that he had to go to Beijing. He did not expect him to come over at this time. Not only did he come, but Fong Xiaokong was also holding a little girl's hand. The little girl had a ponytail, and her eyes were big. She looked smart and cute. She was curiously looking at the people and things around her. She looked slightly younger than little Pomelo. However, little Pomelo was more silent, and this child was more lively. Things have changed. I didn't leave. This is my daughter, Fong Mingming. Fong Xiaokong did not explain much, and old Lu did not intend to get to the bottom of it. At this time, some reporters were at the main venue. They were interviewing a few important figures, such as Yi Hao. Yi Hao did not come to donate because he loved cats or was kind. He mainly wanted to use this event to establish a positive image in front of the public. Therefore, there were basically no reporters in the exhibition area, and not many people knew the third Master Fong and old Lu. Fang Xiaokong lifted Fang Mingming up and placed her on his neck. Come say hello to BC. On the way here, Fang Xiaokong had told his daughter that Fang Xiaokong was more familiar with the name Black Charcoal. Every time she called Fang Xiaokong, she would hear about Zheng Tan. Fang Xiaokong even showed her some photos he had taken with his phone. In order to avoid harassment from the people who came to participate in the event, Zheng Tan had deliberately chosen this high ground. Therefore, if someone wanted to come into contact with Zheng Tan, it would be difficult for someone shorter to do so. Fang Xiaokong was not short, but even though Fang Mingming was riding on Fang Xiaokong's neck, the cat holding board was still a little taller than her. However, as long as she raised her arm, she could easily touch the scratching board. Fang Mingming, who was riding on Fang Xiaokong's neck, looked at Zheng Tan. She did not know much about cats, and she did not have a cat at home. However, many of her relatives had dogs. Therefore, seeing Zheng Tan in person, Fang Mingming was a little afraid. She had heard that cats like to scratch people, and had seen her classmates being scratched by cats. Say hello, high five. Fang Xiaokong patted his daughter's calf and looked at Zheng Tan. Fang Mingming looked at Zheng Tan and hesitated for a moment. She had no choice. Cats that were good-looking and docile always attracted people's attention, and were easier to get close to. However, black cats like Zheng Tan always gave people a sense of alienation and danger. Zheng Tan saw the fear in Fang Mingming's eyes. He gave her face and took the initiative to raise his hand and extend it towards Fang Mingming, keeping his sharp claws. With Fang Xiaokong's encouragement, Fang Mingming also reached out her small hand and touched Zheng Tan's paw. Fang Xiaokong was about to put his daughter down, but unexpectedly, Fang Mingming grabbed Fang Xiaokong's hair with one hand and kicked it with the heel of her foot. Give me another one. In the entire Fang family, probably only his daughter would dare to ride on Fang Xiaokong's neck and grab his hair like this. However, Fang Xiaokong was still laughing happily when his hair was grabbed. Nowadays, many families only had one child and treated them like treasures. After Zheng Tan and Fang Mingming high-fived again, Fang Mingming was completely unafraid. After the third high five, she didn't let go of her hand. Instead, she directly reached out to Zheng Tan and pulled his beard. Zheng Tan was speechless. Although she didn't pull hard and Zheng Tan didn't feel any pain, it was enough to make him depressed. Why did children like to pull cattails and beards? Lu Yao looked at them enviously. Then old Lu grinned and lifted Lu Yao up to his neck. Now father and son were getting closer and closer. Old Lu had a smile on his face all day. Zheng Tan patiently bumped hands with Lu Yao and Fang Mingming a few times. Fang Mingming heard that Lu Yao had donated his pocket money. She didn't have any money with her, but she had brought her father with her. Fang Xiaokong dug into his pockets. There was about 600 to 700 yuan in cash. The rest were all cards. People like them didn't carry much cash, so Fang Mingming stuffed all the money they took out into the donation box. Zheng Tan looked at Lu Yao and Fang Mingming. Two rich second-generation heirs who spent lavishly. Didn't they see the smile on the cat-eared employee's face? On the other side, Lu Yao and Fang Mingming were pasting blessings on the wooden wall. Old Lu and Fang Xiaokong only cared about their children. Zheng Tan stood on high ground and noticed someone sneaking away. Heir Mao had brought black rice here to participate in the event. He wanted to come over and insult Zheng Tan, but he didn't expect to see Fang Xiaokong. Hence, Heir Mao immediately turned and left. However, before Heir Mao could breathe a sigh of relief, his face froze again. Heir Mao, you're actually in Chuhua City. Zhao Lu said in surprise. To prevent Heir Mao from escaping, Zhao Lu grabbed Heir Mao's clothes tightly. F***ck. What kind of luck is this? Heir Mao was very regretful. His luck seemed to be very bad recently. Previously, he was caught by Fang Xiaokong. Today he was caught by Zhao Lu. He couldn't deny it even if he wanted to. Heir Mao was still thinking about how to sneak away when Zhao Lu dragged him to the rest area at the side of the exhibition area. There were many people with cats sitting there and chatting. Coincidentally, someone got up and left an empty table. Zhao Lu looked at Heir Mao as if he was looking at an alien. What, it's only been 2 years and you don't recognize me anymore? Even if he was caught, Heir Mao's tone was still aggressive. Zhao Lu was his peer, not Fang Xiaokong. He didn't need to restrain himself. You've changed a lot, at least you look that way. Zhao Le still remembered Air Mao's ruffian image. Air Mao's father was so angry that he wanted to beat him a few times with a stick. Like a good citizen. Zhao Le nodded affirmatively. Air Mao didn't say anything. However, Black Rice, who was locked in the pet bag, wasn't so quiet. He grabbed the bag with his paws and meowed. Air Mao quickly opened the bag and carried Black Rice out. Fortunately, Black Rice didn't plan to run around. He squatted on the table and looked around curiously, as well as the other cats that followed his owner. A chinchilla jumped onto the table, but the next moment it was slapped down by Black Rice. However, this situation was very common among cats, so the owner of the chinchilla didn't complain. She smiled at Air Mao and left with the chinchilla. Good job. Air Mao patted Black Rice's head proudly, then took out a bag of cat food from his pocket. There was a disposable paper cat bowl under the table. Air Mao poured some into it as a reward for Black Rice's performance just now. Since when did you like cats? Zhao Le couldn't help but ask. Air Mao didn't answer. Instead he asked, why are you here? Someone from the company donated. I just came to take a look. As she spoke, Zhao Le looked at the exhibition area where Zheng Tan was. She was just going to take a look. She didn't expect to bump into Air Mao. Air Mao followed Zhao Li's gaze. There were many people blocking his view. He couldn't see what was going on in the exhibition area. Nor could he see Feng Xiaokong and the others. He could only see the black cat lying on the highest point. Zheng Tan was also paying attention to them. He saw the situation just now. He thought that Air Mao and Zhao Le knew each other, and they were very close. Air Mao looked at the black cat lying on the highest point, then looked at Zhao Le. Do you know that black cat? Air Mao was just casually asking to change the topic. He didn't expect Zhao Le to nod. Yes, I know it. We're quite close. Why do you know it too? Zhao Le noticed Air Mao's constipated expression. Although Air Mao hid it well, Zhao Le still noticed it. Zhao Le was much more sensitive in observing people's expressions now. I don't know it. Air Mao was expressionless, but he cursed the black cat 1,000 times in his heart. F***ck, no wonder his luck wasn't good recently. Now that he thought about it, it was all because of that black cat. It was all because of it. Air Mao didn't want to stay here any longer. He ignored Zhao Li's question and left. He didn't want to be caught by Feng Xiaokong again. Moreover, he didn't know if he would meet any acquaintances later. He didn't expect to meet so many acquaintances at an ordinary charity association event. In the end, Zhao Le still didn't get Air Mao's current address from him. However, getting his phone number was a big gain today. Zheng Tan couldn't hear the conversation between Air Mao and Zhao Le. He could only guess from their attitudes. As expected, Air Mao had a powerful background. Zhao Le didn't send anyone to follow Air Mao after he left. It would be futile. Such methods wouldn't work on Air Mao. After thinking about it, Zhao Le typed a message and sent it to Wang Bin. Air Mao needed Wang Bin to deal with him. It was the weekend. Wang Bin rarely had time to go back to Chuhua City to visit his parents. However, his father was busy with work and hadn't returned home yet. Wang Bin's mother was complaining to Wang Bin about some things in her life recently. When she heard Wang Bin's phone ring, she stopped talking and signaled her son to look at the phone first. Wang Bin had 2 phones. Judging from the sound, it was his personal phone. He didn't think it was anything important at first. However, after reading the message, his expression changed and returned to normal. He calmly put his phone back into his pocket. What's wrong? Wang Bin's mother asked. Nothing. Please continue. After his mother finished nagging and went to rest, Wang Bin went back to his room and closed the door. With a complicated expression, he dialed the number Zhao Le gave him. Hearing the beeping sound from the phone, Wang Bin pondered what he should say to his twin brother when the call connected. After a few rings, the call finally connected. Wang Bin was about to speak when he heard a loud shout from the other side of the phone. Daughter, that's a phone. You can't throw it. Wang Bin was speechless. Daughter? Where did the daughter come from? An illegitimate daughter? Was there going to be a storm in the family? Chapter 176. Air Mao's phone was slapped from the table into the bucket by his daughter. At that time, Air Mao was in a bad mood. He didn't know what to do after coming back from the other side. so he brought a bucket of water to wipe the table. The beer he drank yesterday spilled on the table, as well as the oily soup he ate some time ago. Seeing his daughter, sniffing around the table, Mao rolled up his sleeves and brought a bucket of water over. He used the towel he tore yesterday to practice his hand strength to wipe the table. The phone was placed on the bedside table. When Mao was wiping the computer table, Wang Bin called. The ringing of the phone startled Black Mi, who was squatting next to it. It slapped the phone, and coincidentally, it hit the answer button. Cat owners knew that cats had a habit of being untouchable. Therefore, after the first claw, there would be a second claw. Black Mi's second claw slapped the phone down. What was even more coincidental was that Mao put the bucket next to the bedside table. The bedside table was where he started wiping. Therefore, after Wang Bin heard Mao's roar, there was the sound of something falling into the water. Then there was no reply from the other side. Mao took out the phone from the bucket with a depressed face. He looked at the darkened screen. There was no response when he turned it on. He removed the battery and took out the hairdryer to blow at it. It was useless. Well, this phone couldn't be used anymore. Mao helplessly looked at Black Mi, who was squatting on the table innocently. He rubbed his forehead and suddenly understood the complicated feelings of cat owners. However, he didn't want to go out today. He would buy a new phone tomorrow. He could just use the chat app to contact people. There was no rush. He just didn't know who called him just now. Wang Bin tried to call a few more times, but the other side didn't pick up. He was sure that the voice that roared just now was his twin brother. And after hearing the content of Mao's roar, Wang Bin was eager to know what was going on with his daughter. Today, when he was listening to his mother's nagging, he was still talking about when Mao would get a proper girlfriend, get married, have children, and then stay at home obediently. Wang Bin didn't like to fight unprepared battles. If Mao really caused trouble, he had to prepare in advance. Otherwise, there would be a lot of arguments at home. Of course, he had to find Mao first. However, Wang Bin did not have much time to stay in Chuhua City. After calling Zhao Le to find out more, Wang Bin recalled seeing the black cat at his third uncle's banquet, but he didn't have much of an impression of it. They could definitely find Mao if they used some professionals or some tough methods, but they couldn't use those methods. Otherwise, it would definitely have the opposite effect. Similar things had happened before. Ask the owner of the cat. Zhao Le heard that the family lived in the family compound of Chuhua University. Basically, no one was there during the day. Even if there were children, Zhao Le didn't want to disturb them. After a moment of silence, Wang Bin dialed the phone number of a friend in Chuhua City. That guy was bored out of his mind, so Wang Bin wanted to find something to do. If there was no result, Wang Bin planned to come to Chuhua City next weekend and visit the cat's owner in person. Just like what the third Master Fong had said, most of the people who knew Mao would never have thought that Mao would live in a family compound in the university. Therefore, Wang Bin directly ignored the possibility of Mao living around there. On Zheng Tan's side, Zheng Tan, who was bored like an idiot at the exhibition area, followed the Jiao family home. It was already afternoon when the Jiao Ma brought the two kids to the event, so they directly waited for the event to end before leaving with Zheng Tan. Of course, this was all done in secret. No one knew that the arrogant BC, who occupied the highest spot on the cat support board, would be with the Jiao Ma trio. As for the salary settlement, Xiaoguo would naturally transfer it to his card. This was discussed with the Jiao Pa, so Zheng Tan didn't have to worry about it. After the event, Zheng Tan had nothing to do for the next few days, so he strolled around the campus. Soon Zheng Tan's mood was not so good. He realized that someone was spying on him. This feeling was very unpleasant. Fortunately, the person who was spying on him was an idiot. When Zheng Tan was being spied on, there was also someone following him, but that person probably valued cats more and paid attention to hiding himself. But this time, not only was he not hiding, he was blatantly telling Zheng Tan, "Hey, I'm spying on you." For the third time, Zheng Tan looked at the young man in a casual suit and sunglasses with his hands in his trouser pockets. He thought back to recent events. Was it because of the Green Wings Association's event that he was being spied on? No, it couldn't be. Zheng Tan overturned this guess. It wasn't that Zheng Tan was belittling himself, but from the event and the exhibition that day, he knew that as a cat, He really didn't have much weight. Other than a few people that Zheng Tan knew, such as the third Master Fang, Old Lu, and Zhao Lu, most of the people who had some status in the past had ulterior motives, such as Yi Hao, some media, and some politicians. The person who was spying on him was wearing expensive clothes, and didn't look like someone who lacked money. Also, logically speaking, no one would recognize that BC was the stray cat that hung around Tsinghua University all day. There were so many black cats, and they looked alike, so why were they spying on him? After stretching, Zheng Tan jumped down from the tree and walked along a path. Since the person in sunglasses wanted to follow him, then he would let him. As long as he didn't regret it. The man in sunglasses just made a phone call out of boredom, probably to his girlfriend. I'm not in the company right now. I'm out to relax. Yes, it's spring, the season of birds and flowers. Okay, I'll talk to you later. I still have things to do. Come baby kiss. Seeing Zheng Tan leave, the man in sunglasses quickly hung up and followed. Although he promised to help his friend, it was really too boring. However, he could see many good-looking female university students on campus, and it would be even better if he could have a romantic encounter. Unfortunately, the black cat lay on the tree for an hour, so he could only call someone to kill time. Zheng Tan was now very familiar with Tsinghua University. No matter if it was crowded or remote, he had been to all of them. Just like the man in sunglasses said, now was indeed the season of birds and flowers. However, in some places, the birds didn't mean the flowers were fragrant. Zheng Tan's pace wasn't fast, and he looked like he was leisurely strolling and enjoying the afternoon. The man in sunglasses continued to follow him. Then he smelled a strange smell. There was no one else on this path, only Zheng Tan and the man behind him. The students who had classes were all in class, and the students who didn't have classes would study by themselves, so they wouldn't choose this angel's path. The man in sunglasses looked at his surroundings calmly, and was thinking that Tsinghua University was indeed a century-old school, and the greenery was great. Just as he was thinking about it, he heard a light pop on his shoulder. The man in sunglasses turned his head to look, and his face immediately turned green. A white and gray lump had smashed on his shoulder, and he couldn't wipe it off even if he wiped it. Zheng Tan quickened his pace and ran out of this path. He usually didn't take this path as there were many birds here, and this path was also one of Tsinghua University's, Angel's Path *T. He heard the man in sunglasses curse, and he thought that he must have been hit. Therefore, Zheng Tan didn't plan to stay for long. Those birds with no integrity wouldn't hold back just because there were people below. Actually, not everyone who walked this path would hit the jackpot. It was just a matter of probability, but the man in sunglasses had hit the jackpot more than once today. There was even a lump on his sleeve. This lump was a little red, and he didn't know what the bird had eaten. In short, the man in sunglasses didn't stop cursing. While Zheng Tan was secretly happy, he also heard some problems from the man in sunglasses' words, and it involved Wang Bin and Air Mao. What made Zheng Tan understand was a phone call the man in sunglasses made after he left this path. Wang Bin, let me tell you, in order to help you, I've gone through all kinds of hardships and suffering. The man in sunglasses said as he walked while holding the phone. He had already taken off his jacket, and was holding it in his hand. After he saw the black cat jump onto a stone bench, he also found a stone bench and sat down. You didn't see Air Mao? Where's the cat? Wang Bin asked after listening to the man's complaints. The cat is 1 meter away from me, right next to me. Don't worry, I'm watching. I'll definitely catch Air Mao. The man in sunglasses was very confident. Then what was the look in its eyes when it looked at you? Wang Bin paused and said with uncertainty. He heard a lot about the black cat from Zhao Lu, and he knew that this cat was different from normal cats. Look. What else could it be? A cat's look. The man in sunglasses casually looked at the stone bench next to him, and happened to meet Zheng Tan's eyes, which looked like he was looking at an idiot. The man in sunglasses choked on the second half of his sentence. After a long time he said, F***CK. Beast, I remember telling you to be careful when you're following. Don't be too obvious. Wang Bin sighed. Cough, isn't it just a cat? Look at you guys being so cautious. Forget it, this is just a coincidence. I'll continue to follow. Who knows when I'll see Air Mao run out? The man in sunglasses hung up the phone, took off his sunglasses, and looked seriously at the cat on the stone bench next to him. Hey, are you deliberately playing with me? The man in sunglasses asked. Zhang Tan ignored him and squatted there, pretending to be stupid. Although this man was stupid, he didn't mean any harm to him. After the man in sunglasses asked the question, he laughed at himself, thinking that he must have been hit by bird poop and became stupid. He actually asked a cat like that. However, the man in sunglasses had an idea. He once heard a friend say that if a dog heard someone call its owner's name, the dog would go straight to its owner. Could this method be used? It should be possible. Thus, the man in sunglasses started to chant Air Mao to Zhang Tan, as if he was chanting scriptures. Zhang Tan couldn't help but jump off the stone bench and leave. The man in sunglasses followed behind him. When he passed by a big trash can, he raised his hand and threw the balled-up jacket into it. Zhang Tan pulled his ear. He sighed in his heart. What a prodigal. In fact, Zhang Tan forgot that when he was still human, his style of doing things was similar to this man's. The man in sunglasses followed behind Zhang Tan, and was about to say something when he suddenly caught a glimpse of a figure. He immediately sped up and ran in that direction. The line between 2 points was the shortest, so the man in sunglasses decided to cross the lawn. There were metal railings around the lawn, so the man in sunglasses jumped. One leap. When the man in sunglasses' right foot landed, it happened to step on the poop that Sahara had taken when it broke free from the rope and came out to parkour this morning. However, this person didn't realize it. Zhang Tan looked. It turned out that Air Mao had come back from outside and coincidentally bumped into the man in sunglasses. It had to be said that this was really a coincidence. When Zhang Tan jogged back to the east courtyard, Air Mao and the man in sunglasses had probably already talked for a while. When he reached the 3rd floor, the door to Air Mao's room wasn't closed tightly. Zhang Tan could hear the two people talking inside. I didn't expect you to find a place like this to stay. Are you trying to increase your knowledge? The Air Mao student who even forgot to write the word suitable when writing an essay? This was the voice of the man in sunglasses. Back then, who was the one who wrote his name, Qin Tao, instead of Qin Shou, and wrote 2 pages full of paper and was sent back by the teacher for rewriting. Then, as if he had been wronged, he took the initiative to spread his grievance to the whole class? People who don't even write 3 dots less when writing their own names have no right to criticize me. This was Air Mao's voice. Zhang Tan. Chapter 177. It was a little windy today. The wind that blew in from the ventilation window in the corridor pushed the door open a little. Zhang Tan thought for a while, and walked in to see if the man in sunglasses and Air Mao would fight. For Zhang Tan, watching a fight was a great way to pass the time when he was bored. After Qin Tao and Air Mao argued with each other for a while, the atmosphere eased a little. However, Zhang Tan could tell from their conversation that they were very familiar with each other, and didn't seem to hate each other. Just as Zhang Tan had guessed, Qin Tao, Air Mao, and Wang Bin had all grown up together. They had been classmates from elementary school to high school. The origin of the nickname Qin Shou was caused by Qin Tao himself. When he was in elementary school, he was punished to write his name. As a result, the character Tao in his notebook was missing 3 dots. It was full of dense and crooked Qin Shou. However, Qin Tao didn't notice it and passed it around in class. Then the nickname Qin Shou followed Qin Tao. However, only those who had a good relationship with Qin Tao, or those who had a similar status dared to call him that. Otherwise, this guy would have already punched them. Compared to Wang Bin, Qin Tao and Air Mao had more revolutionary friendship. When they were in middle school, the two of them were always in the last 2 places in class. It was not that they were hopelessly bad at their studies, but because of their status, they were always thrown into classes with more top students and stronger teachers, while Wang Bin was always in the top 10. Therefore, in terms of common topics and their glorious deeds, Air Mao and Qin Tao would definitely have more to talk about. This was also one of the reasons why Wang Bin asked Qin Tao to come over. Speaking of which, why did you come to Chuhua City? Shouldn't you be enjoying yourself in Pearl City? Air Mao threw an unopened bottle of mineral water to Qin Tao. I got into some trouble and was sent here to learn from my uncle. Actually, it's just an idle job. There are people helping me with other things. I don't have to do it myself. It's so boring. After saying so much, Qin Tao opened the bottle and took a few gulps. When he turned his head, he saw the black cat standing at the door looking at him. Pfff. Qin Tao was so agitated that he spat out the water in his mouth. His face turned red as he recalled the time when he was hit by bird droppings. After calming down, Qin Tao pointed at Zheng Tan, who was standing at the door. Are you familiar with this cat? Although it was a question, his tone was firm. When he saw Zheng Tan, Mao was a little surprised. However, when he remembered that he had forgotten to close the door, he was relieved. The security in this area was pretty good. The people who lived in the building were all teachers and retired old professors. They were all of good quality, so there was no need to be too vigilant. Why? Did you lose to it? Mao asked. Qin Tao told him about the bird poop that had been thrown at him. TSK, why did you follow it for no reason? And why did you follow it so stupidly? It's good enough that it didn't lead you into other traps. Getting hit with bird poop is better than getting hurt, Mao said. It can't be? Is this cat that dangerous? Qin Tao looked at Zheng Tan again. It's up to you whether you believe me or not. Mao sniffed. What's that smell? Qin Tao was crossing his legs. Mao's gaze finally fell on Qin Tao's shoes. You beast, you stepped on poop? Mao looked at him with disgust. Ah. Qin Tao crossed his legs and sniffed, then vomited. He quickly found a packaging bag, took off his shoes, and threw them into the bag. He asked Mao for a pair of shoes to make do. No wonder I felt something was wrong when I was crossing the hurdles. Throwing the plastic bag with the poop shoes at the door, Qin Tao looked at the black cat that was still at the door. He felt that the cat was gloating and despising him. Zheng Tan was indeed gloating, but he despised Qin Tao's behavior of throwing away his dirty clothes and throwing away his shoes that stepped on poop. What a prodigal! Shaking his head, Qin Tao got rid of the uncomfortable feeling in his heart. He hit Mao's arm with the half-empty mineral water bottle. It's all your fault. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have come here to suffer. Meow. Lying on the computer table, black rice covered its ears and made a warning sound. It looked at Qin Tao with a fierce look. Hearing this sound, not only Zheng Tan but also Mao and Qin Tao, who were about to continue exposing each other, looked at black rice. For a moment, no one in the room spoke. Zheng Tan and Mao knew that this cat was absolutely fierce when it was angry, but Qin Tao was a bit confused. After a moment of silence, Qin Tao seemed to have thought of something. He took the mineral water bottle and hit Mao again. Meow. This time, the warning sound was louder. Qin Tao looked at black rice, blinked, and hit it again. Meow. This time, not only was the warning sound louder, but it also bared its teeth. The cat that was lying on its stomach also stood up. Ha 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 ha. Mao scooped up the black rice on the computer table, with a smug look. My daughter is indeed protective of her father. Qin Tao was surprised that the cat was so protective of its owner. After hearing Mao's words, he looked constipated. Daughter. Yes. Mao happily raised one of Black Rice's front paws and waved it at Qin Tao. If you hit me with the bottle again, I'll let my daughter scratch you. Qin Tao snorted. Why do you want to raise a cat? Mao only briefly explained how it treated the cat abuser. I don't want to raise a cat that's too strong, but I also don't want a gentle cat that won't even catch mice. Also, the people at the pet center said that this cat should have been domesticated before, but for some reason, it became a stray for a period of time. However, in general, it's quite friendly to people. Qin Tao looked at the cat that was nestled in Mao's arms obediently and discounted the word friendly in his heart. He didn't hit it again. Qin Tao explained the cause and effect of Wang Bin asking him to find Mao. So you followed this cat here? Mao turned its head and looked at Zheng Tan, who was squatting at the door. You sold me out. Zheng Tan pulled his ear. Today was definitely a coincidence. He really didn't plan to bring Qin Tao here. It was just that Mao appeared at that time. Mao and Qin Tao didn't expect to get any answers from a cat, so they continued to chat. When it was time, Zheng Tan went to pick up little Pomelo. When he returned to the family building, Mao's door was already tightly shut. He didn't hear any sound from inside, so it probably went out. The next day, Zheng Tan sent little Pomelo to school. When he was about to go home and go online, he saw that Air Mao's door was open again. Air Mao was becoming more and more disliked closing the door. It was probably because it always forgot to bring the key, and it wasn't good to use the wire to open the door, so it simply left it open. Anyway, there was a door control in the building. It could not only prevent random people from coming in, but also prevent the home cat from running out. After thinking about it, Zheng Tan opened the door and went in. According to the person yesterday, Air Mao's family would probably come looking for him. There was no one else in the house. Air Mao was playing games on the computer, and Black Rice was playing with something on the floor. After noticing that Zheng Tan had entered the house, it glanced at him, then continued to play with that thing with its claws. Zheng Tan saw that there was nothing to see today, so he was about to leave. Suddenly, he saw the thing that Black Rice was playing with. Zheng Tan's eyes narrowed. He was a little confused and uncertain. He stopped walking towards the door and went back into the room, probably because it was familiar with Zheng Tan, and didn't think that Zheng Tan was a threat. Black Rice didn't show any hostility towards Zheng Tan. However, it seemed to be guarding against Zheng Tan taking its toy. Zheng Tan ignored Black Rice and went closer to look at the thing on the floor. It was a pendant. Black Rice was mainly playing with the rope of the pendant, but Zheng Tan's attention was all on the pendant. This thing was very familiar. It looked similar to the jade pendant that the weird old woman gave him. While Zheng Tan was thinking, Air Mao had finished playing around. "Hey Black Coal, it's not good for you to always come in uninvited. Hey daughter, you can't play with this thing." Air Mao didn't care about Zheng Tan anymore. It quickly picked up the pendant and wiped it with its sleeve. Seeing that the pendant's rope was bitten and scratched, Air Mao wondered when it should change the rope. After all, this pendant had been changed a few times. After putting the pendant back, Air Mao saw that Zheng Tan was staring at it, so it waved its hand. "Go back to your house and play. Don't steal Black Rice's cat food." There was an automatic feeding machine in the living room. There was always some cat food there, but Air Mao had never seen this black cat steal food. Zheng Tan went back in deep thought. Looking at Air Mao, that pendant seemed to be very important to it. When he was in Paws' hometown, what did the old woman say? Zheng Tan thought for a while, then went to little Pomelo's wardrobe and took out a small bunch of keys from an inconspicuous corner. He moved his claws, inserted one of the keys into a hidden drawer on the cat tree, opened it, and found the jade pendant that the Jiaopa put inside. He looked at it carefully. It really looked like it. The words on it were similar. Was the person that the old woman was looking for related to Air Mao? Regardless of the relationship between the two, Zheng Tan decided to take the jade pendant and show it to Air Mao. Then he would know the answer. Air Mao wouldn't rob it. The Jiaopa wasn't there, so Zheng Tan couldn't inform him. If he could solve this problem, it would be a good thing. Didn't the Jiaopa always say that he wanted to repay the old woman? Hanging the pendant around his neck, Zheng Tan locked the drawer again, hid the key, and went downstairs to Air Mao's room. Air Mao started a new game. Black Rice was lying in a corner of the bed, sleeping. Zheng Tan jumped onto the computer table and stood next to the computer. Air Mao was shocked by Zheng Tan's action, but it was in the middle of the game and didn't look at Zheng Tan. It couldn't free its hands to push Zheng Tan off the table. Zheng Tan wasn't in a hurry. He squatted next to it and watched. When Air Mao finally finished a game, before it could talk to Zheng Tan, its new phone rang. Zheng Tan looked at Air Mao's impatient face as it talked on the phone, so he played with the mouse out of boredom. Air Mao noticed Zheng Tan's action and came up to stop Zheng Tan from closing its game interface. Suddenly, Air Mao paused and stopped talking. It looked at the jade pendant around Zheng Tan's neck and carefully observed it. The person on the other end of the phone was still talking, so Air Mao hung up. "Hey, I'll take it down and take a look. I'll return it to you later." Air Mao took the pendant off Zheng Tan's neck. Air Mao's first reaction when it saw the pendant around Zheng Tan's neck was, when did this cat steal its pendant and change the string? It noticed a slight difference. After all, it had been wearing the pendant for more than 10 years. It could notice the slight difference. Without a doubt, Zheng Tan's pendant was the real deal, and not some inferior imitation. The quality of the jade was similar to the one Air Mao had. Even if Air Mao didn't know much about jade, It could feel that the quality of this pendant was similar to its own. It took out the pendant that it hadn't had time to change the string, and compared it with the pendant. Chapter 178. Mao had been wearing this pendant since he was very young, but he didn't know much about it. He only had this one pendant. Even Wang Bin didn't have the one his mother gave him. Mao only remembered his mother saying, "Wear it for the blessing of your ancestors." But the problem was that Mao's maternal grandparents were still alive. Even if Mao wasn't familiar with his parents' generation, he knew a little about them. After that, it was his own generation. This era didn't care much about clans. At least, Mao didn't care about that. But that didn't mean that Mao wasn't curious. When a person was bored out of his mind, or was thinking about what to do to divert his attention, a small change could make him excited. Mao was one such example. Mao knew a little about the Jiao family. It shouldn't have any blood relations with them. What puzzled Mao the most was, why would such a valuable item be hung around a cat's neck? Based on his understanding of the Jiao family's schedule, there shouldn't be anyone in the Jiao family at this time. It was very likely that the cat put on the pendant by itself. "Hey Black Coal, where did you get this?" Mao held two jade pendants that were almost the same. He raised his finger and poked Zheng Tan. "Tell me who gave it to you. Maybe it's my relative." Just like in the books, there's a beautiful distant cousin living alone outside, waiting for me to rescue her. Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan thought about the old woman in the village who was carelessly hugging a cat. He then looked at Mao's expectant expression. If he could speak, Mao would definitely be shocked to death. Of course, even if he could speak, he couldn't tell Mao the truth. What if Mao didn't have a cousin, and was only interested in a poor old woman, and went all the way to find her? Did he have to keep this pendant for a year or two? The sooner he solved the problem, the better. Mao asked a series of questions. Some of the questions might have been directed at Zheng Tan or himself. It was rare for him to encounter something so meaningful, but he didn't want to contact his family at the moment, so he couldn't get an answer to his questions. Zheng Tan did not know how to respond. He glanced around the room and found a map in the corner of the room, under a large backpack. Jumping off the table, Zheng Tan walked over to take a look. He raised his paw and flipped the corners of the map that were not covered. One side was a provincial map, and the other side was a city map of Chuhua City. Very good. Mao stopped talking to himself, and looked at Zheng Tan. The map was bought by Mao when he first came to Chuhua City. At that time, Mao bought this map mainly because he wanted to visit some of the scenic spots in Chuhua City. At the same time, there were also bus stops marked on the map for convenience. Come to think of it, it had been quite some time since she had used it as a cushion for her bag. Looking at Zheng Tan, Mao rubbed the two jade tags with his fingers. He walked over and lifted the backpack, took out the map, and put it on the ground in front of him. The map facing up happened to be a provincial map. Zheng Tan looked at the county markings on it, and raised his paw to press on Qingyang City. Mao was silent for a while, then asked, "Qingyang?" Seeing that the black cat in front of him didn't respond, Mao said again, "If yes, waggle your tail vertically. If no, waggle your tail horizontally." Zheng Tan wagged its tail vertically. "Qingyang." Mao sat cross-legged on the floor, and looked at the map. Then he took out a pen and paper from the drawer of the bedside table, and wrote it down. In fact, Zheng Tan was quite puzzled. Why would Mao use such a way of wagging its tail to confirm what it wanted to express? Moreover, Mao was quite receptive to this method. Looking at Black Rice, who was sleeping on the edge of the bed, Zheng Tan didn't think that Black Rice could understand this method. Moreover, this wasn't the first time. Zheng Tan couldn't directly write the answer on the paper or type it on the computer. That would be out of line. Zheng Tan didn't want to be seen as a monster. When Zheng Tan left, Mao put the pendant back on Zheng Tan's neck. Judging from Mao's appearance, it would definitely investigate. Zheng Tan just had to wait. Although it was sometimes silly, Zheng Tan knew that Mao wasn't stupid. Therefore, he wasn't worried that Mao couldn't find any clues. During dinner, Mao wore the pendant outside, and went to the Jiao family to borrow a roll of toilet paper. After chatting with Jiao Ma for a while, it went downstairs. Sitting in front of the computer, Mao stared at the booting screen but didn't touch the mouse. He now knew that it was Associate Professor Jiao's hometown. When he went upstairs to chat with Jiao Ma, he found out the specific location of Associate Professor Jiao's hometown. However, Jiao Ma didn't have any special reaction to the jade pendant. The two children also had the same reaction. Therefore, the jade pendant was most likely from Associate Professor Jiao. The next day, Mao called Zheng Tan to the third floor and continued wagging its tail. This thing belongs to Associate Professor Jiao. Zheng Tan wagged his tail. Associate Professor Jiao gave it to you? He wagged his tail. When Zheng Tan was getting impatient from wagging his tail, they finally reached the key point. After we go to Associate Professor Jiao's hometown, can you take me to find him? He wagged his tail. Mao originally planned to send an email to Associate Professor Jiao if it didn't work out. However, now that there was progress, he decided to look for him personally. Things with suspense are more interesting. Only when the answer is revealed will there be a sense of accomplishment. Mao was very excited and jumped on the spot. He was so excited that he couldn't control his voice. On a whim he sang, "Sister Lin fell from the sky like a light cloud that just rose." After singing these two lines, Mao forgot the rest of the song. 2 seconds later, another voice drifted in from outside the window. I only thought that he was frivolous, but it turns out that his bones are exquisite, not vulgar. The window and the door to the balcony weren't closed. At this time, the surroundings were very quiet, so the voice could be heard clearly. Mao rushed out of the balcony and looked to the 4th floor. General was shaking his head by the iron fence. When he saw that Mao didn't continue, he continued to sing. Mao. F***ck. F***ck. This guy can even sing you opera. Zheng Tan secretly shook his head. These two idiots cooperated well. However, he imagined Mao meeting the old lady. He hoped that Mao wouldn't feel that the world was full of evil. For the next few days, Mao planned how to get Zheng Tan to lead the way. First, he had to find a way to get Jiao Ma's permission before he could bring Zheng Tan out. It would take at least 1 day to go and come back. However, Mao felt that time was too tight. It would take at least 2 days. Hence, Mao thought of Celestine. In the end, Celestine came up with an excuse in his name. Celestine took Zheng Tan out to play more than once. Jiao Ma didn't think much of it. Moreover, after Jiao Pa went abroad, Celestine and the others had been helping to take care of the Jiao family. Jiao Ma didn't say much after a few words of advice. Mao had to ask Celestine for advice on how to bring a cat out. After all, Zheng Tan's cat was different from other cats. If you wanted to use a normal pet bag, Zheng Tan wouldn't even look at it. The day they decided to go out was a Sunday. Mao reluctantly sent black rice to the pet center. He could only ask the people at the pet center for help these few days. The sky was a little gloomy. The weather forecast said that it would rain these few days. Mao borrowed Celestine's car and drove out to Shenyang. Zheng Tan was sleeping in the back seat. There was a travel bag next to him. Zheng Tan had to squat in the bag when he went out on foot. Not long after Mao left, Wang Bin, who wanted to talk to Mao, came to the eastern courtyard of Tsinghua University. He found that the place Mao rented was empty. Professor Lan, who lived across the street, saw Wang Bin, who looked like Mao, and kindly told him that Mao went out, probably somewhere far away, but didn't know where exactly. Zheng Tan was sleeping in a daze. He was woken up by the sudden ringing of his phone. He looked at Mao, who was driving, and picked up the phone with one hand and turned it to silent mode. Zheng Tan couldn't sleep. He looked out of the car window. It was raining heavily. After arriving in Shenyang, Mao booked a room in a hotel. He parked his car in the hotel parking lot. Then he carried his bag out and went to the bus stop to take a taxi. The reason why he didn't drive directly to the village was that Mao didn't know the way. He only knew which town and which village it was. If he drove himself, not only would Celestine's car suffer, but Mao also wouldn't be able to find the place. After thinking about it, he decided that it was better to take a taxi directly. Zheng Tan didn't know the way to the village either. During the spring festival, the Jiao Pa drove, and Zheng Tan was only responsible for looking at the scenery and sleeping. There were buses in the bus stop that went directly from the city to the town below. Although pets were not allowed in the bus stop, the management of this small bus stop was not strict. They didn't check luggage, So Air Mao's little tricks didn't come in handy. When they arrived in Shenyang, the sky began to clear up. The bus that Air Mao wanted to take was in high demand, and people got on the bus before buying the ticket. There was no such thing as booking in advance. There were many people around the bus stop who were in charge of soliciting passengers. It was noisy. Zheng Tan felt stuffy in the bag, but it wasn't so good outside either. Looking out through the gap, Zheng Tan felt a little dizzy when he heard people shouting and running around in local dialect. Whether it was in the past or now, Zheng Tan had never had such an experience. However, Air Mao seemed to be quite familiar with it. It smiled and chatted with the people who were soliciting passengers outside the bus stop. That bus was already full, but the people who were soliciting passengers continued to get people on the bus. Those people were already used to it. Looking at the bus that was smaller than the bus in Chuhua City, but full of people, Zheng Tan felt uneasy. Was it really okay? Was it seriously overloaded? Air Mao decided to wait for the next bus. It wasn't that Air Mao didn't want to squeeze in, but that Zheng Tan couldn't. If he did, he would probably be squeezed into a cat meat pie. After waiting for 2 hours, the next bus came. Air Mao went up and grabbed a seat. Zheng Tan was relieved. It felt good to have a seat. Zheng Tan felt that the bus ride was quite bad. There were all kinds of smells, all kinds of noises, and a child kept crying. It hurt his ears, so Zheng Tan regretted this trip. There were ups and downs along the way, but generally speaking, the bus was emptier as they went further. When they finally arrived at the bus stop, Zheng Tan opened the zipper of his bag and breathed in the fresh air outside. Air Mao didn't complain. It seemed that this guy had a lot of similar experiences. When he came to the village during the spring festival, the weather was good, so he didn't feel anything. Now it had just rained, so everywhere was wet and deserted. Occasionally he could see 1 or 2 pedestrians walking by. Air Mao could feel that his feet were heavier when he walked a few steps on the muddy road. There was a thick layer of mud on the soles of his shoes. He went to a small grocery store at the entrance of the village and asked for a pair of rain boots. Otherwise his sports shoes would be ruined. Air Mao, who was fully equipped, stood at the entrance of the village and looked at the road leading to the village. Okay, Sister Lin is just ahead. Chapter 179. When they arrived at the village, Zheng Tan had to lead the way. Otherwise, Air Mao wouldn't know where to find them. The surrounding area was under construction again. They were preparing to build a flat path in front of each house. Zheng Tan and the others arrived at a bad time. The construction had just started. Some of the stones on the surface had been removed, so there was a lot of mud. Some of the puddles could only be reached by stepping on stones that were specially placed there. Hey Black Coal, bark when we're here. Don't let me pass, Air Mao said. After passing through the mud path, the road surface was slightly better. At least there was a small path paved with stones and bricks. This time, Zheng Tan really had to come out of his backpack to lead the way. After a few steps, his paws were all covered in mud. There was nothing he could do about it. It was just that he didn't have shoes to wear. Zheng Tan couldn't get rain boots like Air Mao. It had just rained, and it wasn't the peak time to go out, so there weren't many people passing by. Originally, Zheng Tan was worried that the villagers who had seen him during the New Year would recognize him. However, those villagers only glanced at him and didn't pay any attention. Perhaps, to the villagers, there was nothing special about such a cat. It was not a rare cat breed. Mongrel cats were everywhere, and a strong black cat was nothing special. Sometimes, one shouldn't take oneself too seriously. This was Zheng Tan's awareness. When they passed by the Jiao family's old house, Zheng Tan saw that the door was closed. He guessed that the old man and woman had gone to town. They would probably come back after the surrounding roads were repaired. This made Zheng Tan even more relieved. After the rain, the smell of mud entered his nose. In the Jiaopa's words, it was the smell of actinomycetes. Perhaps because of Air Mao's influence, Zheng Tan was a little nervous when he approached the old woman's tile-roofed house. Although he knew that the person Air Mao was looking for was the old woman, Zheng Tan had a strange feeling about the old woman. She wasn't as easy to fool as the old man and woman in the Jiao family. Is it here? Air Mao looked at the small village house, pushed open the gate and walked in. There was no noise around, so Zheng Tan and Air Mao could hear the opera from the small tile-roofed house. Taking a deep breath, Air Mao stood in front of the rustic wooden door. Just as he was about to knock, the door opened from the inside. A 15-year-old girl carrying a basket was shocked when she saw Air Mao standing in front of the door. Air Mao's first thought was, "Hey, there really is a Sister Lin." This girl was not bad-looking. Although she was a little tanned and her dressing was not as good as the children in the city, her looks were indeed passable. Zheng Tan looked at the girl. She looked familiar. He must have seen her during the New Year, but she was definitely not from this house. The old lady lived alone. In this place, it was not uncommon for girls to stop going to school after finishing middle school at this age. Before Air Mao could ask, the little girl shouted into the house, "Granny, someone is looking for you." Then she left with the basket. She was only here to deliver something. People often came here to look for Granny, so she thought that the person in front of her had the same purpose and did not pay much attention to her. Looking at the situation, it was obvious that she was from another house. Otherwise, she would not have run away when she saw a guest. Air Mao sighed. It was different from what he had imagined. She was still a granny. After the Sister Lin image was destroyed, Air Mao was not very enthusiastic. The tile-roofed house was not big. The living room was clear at a glance, and there was only one bedroom. Obviously, the owner was in the bedroom. Zheng Tan hesitated for a moment, but still followed Air Mao in. The lights were not on, and the small window behind was closed. The light was not very good. The opera singing from the radio dispelled the depression brought by the darkness. The radio was a little old, and there were some rustling sounds accompanying the opera singing. It gave off a sense of antiquity. It was still the same wooden recliner. The same person was lying on the recliner, covered with a thin blanket. She looked like she was sleeping or resting with her eyes closed. However, because her back was to the window, Air Mao could not see the expression of the person lying on the recliner. The three-legged cat looked at Air Mao, then focused on Zheng Tan. Obviously, it recognized Zheng Tan, but it did not intend to move. It changed its position and continued to sleep on the old lady's lap. Zheng Tan moved uncomfortably. The atmosphere was a little strange. Neither of them opened their mouths. The only sound that could be heard was the static of the radio, and an opera that could not be heard clearly. Air Mao was still thinking about the first sentence he should say. Nonsense was the first sentence in interpersonal relationships, but this time the situation was different. If it was any other time, Air Mao would have casually brought up a topic, but this time, he was here to look for Sister Lin. If he could not find Sister Lin, it would be fine to find someone of the same generation or the younger generation. He was not here to look for his ancestor. More elders meant more control. Air Mao was already having a headache with the elders in his family. They were always talking about what you should and shouldn't do, or praising other people's children. Moreover, under Wang Bin's contrast, Air Mao had already become a hooligan and good for nothing in the elders' words. If it were anyone else, they would have already decided to go straight to the point. They had come so far driven, squeezed into a bus, and stepped on a muddy road. Wasn't it just to find relatives? But Air Mao was different. Air Mao was not a good person. When he was wandering outside, he had seen many people from all walks of life. His way of thinking was poles apart from the rest of the family. Before he came, he had decided to look at the person first before deciding whether or not to acknowledge them. To put it bluntly, in Air Mao's heart, looking for people based on the pendant was just an excuse to divert his troubles and find something to do to change his mood. Zheng Tan observed Air Mao and the old woman on the recliner. These two guys were not simple people, especially the old woman. Zheng Tan did not believe that her ears were bad, and she could not hear the shouting of the little girl and Air Mao's footsteps. In the end, Air Mao chose to deal with all changes by sticking to the status quo. Anyway, the choice was in his hands. There was no hurry. Without Sister Lin, things would be boring and simple. What was there to see about the old woman? Air Mao dragged a chair over from the corner and sat down. He crossed his legs and looked around with a bored look. The opera on the radio changed one after another. Zheng Tan yawned. There was a box of biscuits wrapped in paper on the table. Zheng Tan had seen this kind of local specialty during the New Year. He jumped on the table and sniffed the biscuits. There was no strange smell. Zheng Tan raised his paw and opened the paper. Let these two continue to confront each other. I'll fill my stomach first. Half an hour later, the old woman on the recliner moved. Mao was delighted. Haha, old woman, you can't take my patience anymore, right? Zheng Tan, who was drowsy, also looked over. The old woman sighed softly. Then, she supported herself on the recliner and sat up slowly. She reached into her pocket and took out a porcelain bottle. She was old and her hands were not very steady. When she took something, her hands trembled. She pulled the cork several times before she succeeded. Zheng Tan's heart trembled. He was afraid that the old woman would lose her balance and throw the bottle away. Moreover, Zheng Tan was anxious for her as he watched her pull the cork out. If it was an impatient person, he would have gone to help her in the morning. Mao was more patient and did not go to help. He probably knew that the old woman in front of him was not a simple person, so he was still in a wait-and-see mode. Mao frowned when he saw that the old woman's every move was difficult, and her hands were trembling. He still did not move or make a sound. The old woman rubbed her eyes. Then, she carefully poured out small round balls in her palm. They looked like some kind of pills, such as quick-acting heart-relieving pills or compound salvia miltioriza dropping pills. Zheng Tan had seen many people take them. They looked similar. She was old and had many problems. During the new year, Zheng Tan saw that she could play the arrow quite well. Why did it feel like she had one foot in the grave now? However, it was very dangerous for an old woman to fall ill. It was understandable that her mental state had changed so much. In addition, under the influence of the surrounding environment, there was a sense of bleakness and desolation. Her trembling hands made everything a little more difficult. Zheng Tan watched as she poured about 10 of those little balls into her mouth and swallowed them. She stood up and took a sip of water from the wooden stool beside her. Then she let out a long sigh. The radio was playing a piece of opera. The singing was easier to understand than before. Helpless flowers fall, as if the familiar swallow returns. There was a strong sense of helplessness and sighs in the murmur. She could not stop the passage of time, and the endless ups and downs of life. This feeling, this scene, and this possible blood relationship. If someone was more sensitive, they would have tears in their eyes. Even Mao felt that he had gone too far. It was just that he had not seen Sister Lin. Why was he arguing with an old woman? Dong. Gurgle, gurgle, gurgle. Just as the old woman was about to put the lid back into her pocket, her hand trembled, and the porcelain bottle fell to the ground. Fortunately, the ground was uneven and not cement, and the bottle was probably sturdy enough to not break. Zheng Tan pulled his ear and looked at Mao. Mao curled his lips. He stood up and walked over to pick up the porcelain bottle that had rolled under the table. He wiped the dust off the bottle but didn't see any words on it. He thought for a while, pulled out the cork and sniffed. Then, Mao's face became strange and even a little twisted. He gritted his teeth and asked, "Old lady, what kind of elixir is in this bottle?" The old woman who was lying back on the recliner said calmly and slowly, "Hua Hua Dan." Zheng Tan. If he guessed correctly, this so-called Hua Hua Dan was that kind of snack. People in the 1980s were more familiar with this kind of snack. It was also called Chun Pai Dan, or rat poop. In Chu Hua, this kind of snack was rarely seen. Zheng Tan's mood at this moment was so bad that even an alpaca could not calm his impulse to flip the table. F***ck, why was a small piece of junk food in such a high-end porcelain bottle? It was just a snack and they made it look so bleak and miserable. Mao held back his frustration and handed the bottle to the old woman. After taking the bottle, the old woman asked Mao, "Do you want to eat it? It tastes pretty good." Eat my ass." Zheng Tan pulled his ear again. When faced with this kind of old woman, helpless was not enough to describe it. As if she did not see Mao's expression, the old woman continued, "There's no taste in my mouth. At this age every extra day is a gain. Eating snacks is better than taking medicine." She suddenly thought of something and pointed her finger generously. "Oh, there's a carton of pure milk under the bed. If you're thirsty you can drink it. It's a good brand. It's often advertised on TV. It's not cheap. I drink it every day." Zheng Tan and Mao. Chapter 180. Zheng Tan stood on a fence post in the yard and yawned out of boredom. Then he looked down at an earthworm crawling on the ground. Inside the tiled house, the old lady and Air Mao were talking about their experiences over the years. Zheng Tan was not in the mood to listen to their stories, so he came out to get some fresh air. Actually, the old lady had already guessed that Air Mao and her were related by blood. Air Mao could not deny it even if he wanted to. According to seniority, Air Mao had to call the old lady grandaunt. Zheng Tan heard from the villagers that the old lady came to the village over 40 years ago. She was already 40 years old at that time. Counting the years, she would be 90 years old in another 2 years. After Zheng Tan yawned more than 10 times, the wooden door creaked open. Air Mao walked out from inside. From the expression on Air Mao's face, the two of them seemed to be having a good conversation. It did not look like it was being played by the old lady. "Let's go." Air Mao waved at Zheng Tan, indicating that they were ready to leave. Zheng Tan looked at the tiled house and then looked at Air Mao. Was it like this after the reunion? Not really. It was not convenient for Air Mao to take the old lady away. He did not drive here. Even if he did, it would not be easy to leave. He planned to go back first and discuss with his family before coming back to pick up the grandaunt. After all, this was not a small matter. Because Air Mao had set his phone to silent mode before coming here, he found that there were 19 missed calls when he was on the bus heading to Xinjiang district. All of them were from the same number, Wang Bin. However, Air Mao only glanced at them and did not call back. Zheng Tan heard Air Mao sighing all the way. He knew that Air Mao could not avoid talking to his family this time. After staying at a hotel in Xinjiang district for a night, they drove back to Chuhua City early the next morning. The journey back was quite smooth. The first thing Air Mao did when he arrived in Chuhua City was not to talk to his mother about the grandaunt. Instead, he went to the pet center to pick up Black Rice. Black Rice was probably angry at being left in the pet center. As far as Zheng Tan knew, Black Rice ignored Air Mao for the next 3 days. Even when Air Mao was holding its favorite plush toy, it only moved its paws perfunctorily. At first, Air Mao thought it was sick, but after it was sent to the pet center, everything was normal. The veterinarian jokingly said that the cat was probably throwing a tantrum. Air Mao waited on it for 3 days before it returned to its original state. After returning to Chuhua City from Shenyang, Air Mao was often not at home, and no one came to look for Air Mao. Celestine came once and took Zheng Tan to the night building to play. He also told Zheng Tan about Air Mao's family situation. As the saying goes, having an elder at home is like having a treasure. For Air Mao, this new grandaunt was such a treasure. Previously, the elders in the family did not get along with Air Mao, but grandaunt changed and became Air Mao's biggest backer in Chuhua City. Grandaunt did not have a son, but she got along well with Air Mao. Seeing this, the elders in the family had nothing to say about Air Mao always running to grandaunt's place. Air Mao's grandfather even encouraged this behavior. It was said that whenever Air Mao quarreled with his father, he would run to grandaunt's place to seek refuge. With grandaunt around, Air Mao's father had to hold back his anger. Therefore, Air Mao did not have to hide anymore. Recently, he even bought a house for grandaunt by a scenic lake and hired someone to take care of it. The old lady gave face and chose Air Mao's house and rejected the arrangement of Air Mao's parents. "You really know how to cause trouble," Celestine said to Zheng Tan. With someone to rely on, Air Mao was a lot more arrogant, but he didn't move out of the East End compound. If Celestine hadn't told Zheng Tan wouldn't have known even if he was beaten to death. Air Mao's father was the head of the provincial government, and the residents of the entire East End compound probably wouldn't know that the provincial governor's son lived in the compound. Air Mao was arrogant, but that was only in comparison to how he used to hide from people and things. As long as Air Mao didn't say anything, no one would be able to guess his background. Furthermore, in a certain area, everyone only knew Wang Bin, the provincial governor's son, and was very unfamiliar with the name Wang Ming. In the compound, Zheng Tan lay on the branch of a tall Chinese parasol tree and looked down at Air Mao, who was walking his cat in the grass below. Recently, when this guy went out to walk his cat, he was wary of the cats around him as if they were wolves. Except for Huang, because Huang was the only male cat that had been castrated. Air Mao. A person sauntered over from the main gate of the compound. Zheng Tan looked over and recognized that this person was Qin Tao, whom he had lured to Heavenly Poop Road and smashed into 2 piles of bird poop. He was dressed pretty much the same as last time, in a casual suit and leather shoes, looking decent. You left early again. Mao cast a glance at him. It was only 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so Qin Tao must have left early to come over. I was bored sitting there. I played 2 games and lost 2 in a row, so I'm not in the mood anymore. I'm going back to sleep. I'll go to the bar at night and find a girl I like, Qin Tao said indifferently. In any case, he came over like this every day. Sometimes, when the weather was bad, he would just sleep at home. It didn't matter if the company didn't have him. The employees all knew that he was just a decoration. Mao didn't comment on Qin Tao's answer. I came over to tell you that it's my birthday this Saturday, 7 o'clock in the evening. I've booked a private room at Wuxia, and I'll introduce you to some friends. When you get to know each other, we can play together. Don't stay with the cat all day, you're bored, Qin Tao said disdainfully. Is Wang Bin going? Mao asked. That guy is a real busy person now. He never participates in these kinds of activities. I've only seen him a few times since I came to Chuhua. But we're different from him. We're bad students who enjoy ourselves in time. Qin Tao gave a you know what I mean look. Okay, 7 o'clock Saturday night, I'll be there on time. Mao was relieved when he heard that Wang Bin wasn't going. Oh right, Qin Tao glanced around. Where's the black cat? Mao raised his hand and pointed at the tree Zheng Tan was lying on. The leaves weren't very dense yet, so it was easy to see Zheng Tan's tail from below. Qin Tao looked at the direction Mao was pointing at. Zheng Tan also looked at Qin Tao curiously. Why was this guy looking for him? Revenge? Mao, bring the black cat with you on Saturday, Qin Tao said. Why? You're inviting a cat for your birthday? Are you a cat? Besides, you're not that close to it. No, why are you inviting it and not my daughter? Are you discriminating against me? Mao stared. Hey, I really don't know what you cat slaves are thinking all day long. Why are your brains always turning to the wrong direction? Qin Tao shook his head. It's my cousin. She has a bad temper, but she's very nice to cats. The problem is that she's never raised a cat well. It's either the cat ran away by itself or something happened to it. In short, she can't raise a cat herself, but when the cat is around, she's in a good mood. I don't know what's wrong with that girl recently, but it's like she ate explosives. You know, I'm taken care of by my uncle in Chuhua, so I have to take care of this girl. It's impossible for me not to invite her to my birthday party. With a cat around, I'm more assured. At least she won't throw a tantrum. Listening to Qin Tao's words, Zheng Tan concluded that Qin Tao wanted his birthday party to go smoothly and have a good time. He didn't want his cousin to mess things up and drag him over to accompany her. In Qin Tao's eyes, Black Rice wasn't as reliable as Zheng Tan. Although this guy was a playboy, he still had a good eye. Accompany guests, Zheng Tan moved the tip of his tail. Why would he go if there were no benefits? As he was thinking, Zheng Tan heard Mao under the tree say, 10,000. What? Qin Tao was stunned and didn't understand what Mao meant. I said. Mao raised his index finger and pointed at the black cat on the tree, then extended it to Qin Tao. That cat's appearance fee is 10,000. F***CK, do you think I'm inviting a golden cat? 10,000. $10,000 can buy hundreds of these cats. Oh, the cat traffickers have cheaper ones. You can buy a fat one for a few $dozen. Mao wasn't in a hurry. He counted with his fingers and started to calculate the gains and losses. Think about it. If your cousin gets mad, the wine she smashes will cost more than this, right? Also the tables, chairs, benches, and all kinds of compensation. Listening to Mao's words, Zheng Tan nodded in his heart. This kid was teachable. Sometimes Mao was quite useful. Okay, it's only $10,000. Let's do it this way. Saturday night, 7 o'clock. You and that black cat, be on time. $10,000 was really nothing to Qin Tao. After achieving his goal, Qin Tao took a phone call and hurried away. It was a call from his assistant. There was an urgent document that he needed to sign. Although his position in the company was basically just for show, he still had to go through the necessary procedures. After driving out of Chuhua University, Qin Tao suddenly remembered that the black cat wasn't Air Mao's. What right did it have to talk about the appearance fee of other people's cats? Seriously, he was fooled when he wasn't paying attention. Qin Tao really wronged Air Mao. The reason why Air Mao talked about Zheng Tan's appearance fee was because of Celestine. Celestine told Air Mao that if it wanted Zheng Tan to do anything in the future, it better give something in return. Otherwise, the cat would be perfunctory. If Zheng Tan knew the truth, he would definitely sigh. Sure enough, Celestine was more familiar with his way of doing things. After hearing Celestine's words, Air Mao was thinking that since cat food and stuffed animals were useless, it would be better to ask for money directly. When the time came, it could just give the money to the Jiao family and say that it was a red packet from them as a thank you gift. Air Mao was now much more familiar with the Jiao family. It often took the initiative to help the Jiao family move things. Therefore, when Air Mao proposed to take Zheng Tan out to play, Jiao Ma hesitated for a while, but still agreed. With Celestine in front of her and Air Mao and Celestine being brothers, plus the fact that her cat liked to go out to play, Jiao Ma could only sigh in her heart. Her cat had been raised astray. However, if she didn't allow it to go out to play, she couldn't bear to see it lying listlessly on the sofa with its ears down. In short, it was spoiled. On Saturday, Zheng Tan still had dinner at home. As for Qin Tao's birthday party, Zheng Tan didn't think that he would be able to eat anything there. It was better to fill his stomach first. Even if something happened, he would have the strength to escape. Menhuasha was a private clubhouse, and the boss was a woman in her 40s. Although she was about the same age as Qin Tao's mother, Qin Tao still called her Sister Sha and not Auntie. After all, women of this age tended to be addressed in a younger way. Sister Sha happened to be in the shop today. When she saw Air Mao, she was stunned for a moment. Then she smiled and took the initiative to say a few words to Air Mao. She had seen Wang Bin before, so she was a little surprised to see Air Mao. Zheng Tan was in the backpack, but his head stuck out of the backpack and looked around. There were more people coming in and out of the shop. If Zheng Tan walked on the ground, he would probably be kicked and stepped on. This was the tragedy of being small. Oh, you also brought a cat. Sister Sha saw the black cat head on Air Mao's backpack and chuckled. Also, did Qin Tao make some preparations in case Zheng Tan couldn't come? Seeing Air Mao's confusion, Sister Sha explained. Just now, there was a little beauty with a leopard cat that was bigger than the average cat. It was very impressive. She was also going to Qin Tao's place, so. Chapter 181. Hearing Sister Sha's words, Air Mao frowned. He scolded Qin Tao in his heart, but he still smiled and thanked Sister Sha. After all, Sister Sha was doing him a favor. When they walked to the private room booked by Qin Tao, Air Mao said to Zheng Tan, "Black Coal, don't run around later. If the situation is not right, we can just leave. Don't get involved with them." In Air Mao's eyes, although Zheng Tan's IQ was a little higher, it was just an ordinary cat. Sister Sha's words of big cats, and not to be trifled with, made Air Mao think that big cats were generally not easy to get along with and were very wild. The waiter led Air Mao to the private room that Qin Tao had booked. Zheng Tan stood in the room and observed the situation around her. This floor of the clubhouse seemed to be filled with young people. The lights in the corridor were dimmed ambiguously. Zheng Tan saw a few couples being intimate, as if no one else was around. The passers-by either whistled a few times or walked past calmly, as if they did not see anything. Obviously, they had already adapted to the style of the club. Perhaps it was due to the lighting, but many passers-by did not notice Zheng Tan's presence. Furthermore, Zheng Tan was only a cat's head peeking out from inside the bag. She did not have much of a presence. The young men and women were very busy. If it was a beautiful woman with a hot body, she might have attracted some attention, but no one would pay attention to a cat. "It's here." The waiter signaled. Air Mao opened the door and went in. Zheng Tan was on his back, so he couldn't see the situation inside. However, he could guess the situation from the sounds he heard. Young people always liked to sing and dance when they got together. They were also more open. When Air Mao entered the door, the people sitting closer to the door glanced at him. They probably didn't know him and didn't care. The first thing Air Mao did when he entered the door was not to look for Qin Tao or the girls, but to look for the big cat that Sister Sha had mentioned. However, he didn't know if it was because there were too many people blocking his sight or the light in the room, but Air Mao didn't find the cat. Qin Tao noticed the door. Seeing that it was Air Mao, he immediately ran over. He put his arm around Air Mao's shoulder and said, "Let's go. I'll introduce you to some talented female college students." Before Qin Tao could take 2 steps, he was pulled aside by Air Mao. "You even found a big cat?" "Ah. Oh, I just found out about it. It's a friend's cat. I didn't know she would bring her cat here." Qin Tao and Air Mao were talking at the side. The people in the room also noticed Air Mao because of Qin Tao. Looking at them, they knew that they had a good relationship. They were definitely not ordinary friends. Immediately, some people began to ponder in their hearts. Due to the change in Air Mao's angle, Zheng Tan was facing the group of people in the room. "Aya! It's another cat!" Someone shouted. "Where?" "It's in the backpack." "That's true." Bang! The door was forcefully pushed open. A girl with colorful hair walked in. She was wearing ripped jeans and a motorcycle jacket. She also had heavy makeup on her face. It was a strong contrast with the other girls' outfits. However, everyone seemed to be familiar with this girl. They didn't say anything. Some even wanted to avoid her. "Tang Kai, do you want to sing?" A girl who had just finished singing asked the person who came in. Qin Tao's new girlfriend was a student at the music school. Some of his girlfriend's classmates were also here today. Most of the time, they were the ones singing. The one who had just spoken was Qin Tao's girlfriend. It had to be said that people who came from music schools sang much more formally. Zheng Tan thought, no wonder the song just now sounded so comfortable. Qin Tao's girlfriend asked this out of kindness. If she didn't say anything, Tang Kai would really be marginalized. However, it was obvious that Qin Tao's girlfriend didn't know Tang Kai well enough. The girl named Tang Kai didn't appreciate the kindness. She waved the microphone away. "It's none of your business whether I sing or not." Once she opened her mouth, it was as if she had eaten gunpowder. "That's my cousin Tang Kai." Qin Tao whispered to Air Mao. Then he motioned for Air Mao to quickly hand the cat over. "Hurry up. Can't you see that my girlfriend's expression is stiff?" Tang Kai was in a bad mood today. She sat on the sofa by the side and lit a cigarette. Looking at the claw mark on her sleeve, Tang Kai became even more irritated. If it wasn't for the sleeve, there would definitely be a scratch on her arm. Not many girls smoked, especially someone like Tang Kai. At first glance, it was obvious that she didn't have a good temper. No wonder the few seats next to her were empty. No one was stupid enough to come here to be scolded. "Hey Tang Kai, there's something I need your help with." Qin Tao pulled Air Mao over. "I'm not free." Tang Kai didn't even look at Qin Tao. She continued to smoke. No one knew what she was thinking. "I don't care. You have to help look after it. I'm taking my brother to meet some people." Qin Tao grabbed Air Mao's bag and threw it to Tang Kai. "Are you deaf?" "I said I'm not." Tang Kai's voice stopped abruptly. She was about to throw back the bag that Qin Tao threw to her. She didn't expect to directly meet a pair of cat eyes. This was also the reason why she stopped talking. "Cat." Tang Kai immediately froze. Being thrown over just like that. Zheng Tan cursed Qin Tao's ancestors in his heart. Then, he carefully observed the girl in front of him. The makeup was too thick, covering her original appearance. Her mouth was painted dark purple, and the fingernails holding the cigarette were painted black. She really didn't look like a good girl. However, just as Qin Tao had said, Tang Kai suppressed her temper as soon as she saw the cat. She was like a hedgehog with spikes all over its body that would stab anyone it wanted. When she saw Zheng Tan, she immediately put away her spikes. Zheng Tan didn't feel any malice from Tang Kai. Although the girl in front of him looked like those devils on TV, his intuition couldn't be wrong. Unzipping the bag, Zheng Tan walked out of the bag. He raised his head and could touch Tang Kai's chest. Zheng Tan sized it up. It was quite big. If he raised his paw and stepped on it, Tang Kai wouldn't mind. After all, he was just a cat now. Who would care so much about a cat? However, thinking about it was just thinking. Before he understood the girl's temper, Zheng Tan chose to behave. He walked from Tang Kai's lap to the sofa cushion, then squatted by the side and looked at the other people in the room. Qin Tao's taste was good. There were many beauties in the room, some pure and some charming. What was interesting was the thoughts of those people. There were many small details that could be seen through the drinking. Perhaps it was because a bystander saw more clearly, but Zheng Tan found it very interesting. Tang Kai threw the cigarette between her fingers into the ashtray, then took out a wet tissue from her pocket to wipe her fingers. Now, her every move was very careful, as if she was afraid of scaring the cat next to her away. Although Tang Kai was almost scratched by the leopard cat in the bathroom 5 minutes ago, and she was nervous when she saw the black cat just now, it didn't affect her love for cats. Zheng Tan was watching the interaction in the room. Suddenly, his ear felt a little itchy. He knew that Tang Kai was poking the fur on his ear. He flicked his ear and didn't pay attention. Seeing that Zheng Tan didn't reach out his paw, Tang Kai was relieved. She reached out and scratched Zheng Tan's chin, paying attention to not let her long nails hurt the black cat. Zheng Tan glanced at Tang Kai, then turned back to pay attention to the people over there. Some people began to test Air Mao. Obviously, they didn't know Air Mao's background, and Qin Tao didn't tell them. When Qin Tao introduced his friends to Air Mao, he took time to look at Tang Kai. Seeing that Tang Kai was like a hedgehog without thorns, he suddenly felt that the 10,000 yuan was not wasted. Hey, what are you guys playing? A 17 or 18-year-old girl walked in. Zheng Tan looked over, then fixed his eyes on the leopard cat next to the girl. Narrowing his eyes, Zheng Tan carefully stared at the leopard cat. When he heard from Sister Xia, he was wondering who it was. This guy. Wasn't it the one that attacked him at Fong San's treat and got slapped by him? Now it's arrogant again? Look at it, it's so arrogant. Arrogant my ass. How can this guy be a threat to me? Zheng Tan wasn't bragging, but if he could slap that guy once, he could slap him a second time, a third time. The girl who came in was showing off how her cat was sitting on the toilet. Under some people's hints, she looked at Tang Kai. The leopard cat originally wanted to eat a piece of jerky from the coffee table, but it didn't get the jerky. Instead, it noticed Zheng Tan. For a moment, the atmosphere in the room was a bit strange. Some people looked at the leopard cat, and then looked at the black cat that was calmly squatting next to Tang Kai. On the surface, they looked worried, but in their hearts, they were excited, waiting to watch a good show. Air Mao and Qin Tao were ready to let the girl take the leopard cat away. This was what Air Mao and Qin Tao had agreed when they came in. Tang Kai was also nervous. She had experienced the leopard cat's temper. If she hadn't reacted fast enough, her arm would have been bleeding. However, before they could say anything, the leopard cat suddenly arched its body, flattened its ears, and all the fur on its body stood up. It opened its mouth and made a low growl, as if it was on guard against something dangerous. It didn't immediately rush forward like the others thought it would. The people around were confused. Why did it feel like this reaction was the opposite? Shouldn't it be that the black cat's fur stood up, and then the leopard cat elegantly walked over to slap it? Only Zheng Tan knew that this guy recognized him. Some people thought that cats had bad memories, but in fact, most of the time, they could easily forget things that they didn't care about. Zheng Tan had seen a description of cats in a magazine that Jiao Pa subscribed to. It said that cats not only had long-term memories, but also had emotional images. Cats, like other mammals, gained experience through learning. Good or bad memories were brought by various activities and experiences. A cat's short-term memory might be fleeting, but their long-term memory was quite amazing. Besides, this leopard cat was a carefully bred breed. It might have the hereditary hybrid advantage, which was also possible for it to have a better memory. Or perhaps it was because the slap from before was too deep. Every time the leopard cat fought with other cats, it would think of the slap it got, and the black cat that didn't look too big. Zheng Tan narrowed his eyes and looked at the leopard cat standing there and growling. He was still calmly squatting on the soft sofa cushion. Noticing Tang Kai's nervousness, Zheng Tan raised his chin and rubbed it against Tang Kai's fingers, indicating that Tang Kai should continue scratching. I'm having fun, so I don't want to bother with that guy. Qin Tao elbowed Air Mao, who was next to him, and said, Bro, something's wrong. Why does the big cat look like it's afraid? Chapter 182. Zheng Tan was lying on the sofa, looking down at the leopard cat next to the coffee table. The leopard cat just stood there, growling, but no one dared to pull it away. It didn't look easy. Anna, pull your cat away. Qin Tao whispered to the girl who had brought the leopard cat in. The girl named Anna frowned. It's better not to touch it at this time. It's angry. Besides, the trainer my parents hired said that if it behaves like this, it must have met someone or something difficult to deal with. I can't handle it alone. Anna also felt strange. There were only Tang Kai and the black cat on the sofa over there. It couldn't be Tang Kai who made the leopard cat like this. When they were in the bathroom, the leopard cat had scratched Tang Kai and was not afraid at all. But if it was the black cat, let alone Anna herself, most of the people present would not believe it. Qin Tao took out his mobile phone and was about to call Sister Sha to get some help. He didn't want to see any bloodshed here. When a cat went crazy, its destructive power would be no less than Tang Kai's, especially such a big cat. When cats confronted each other, it didn't mean that you were more powerful, louder, or more powerful. Zheng Tan didn't want to pay attention to this guy. There were so many people in the room, and Zheng Tan didn't want to cause any trouble. If this guy knew what was good for him, and took the initiative to step back, everyone would be safe. However, things didn't develop in the way Zheng Tan had hoped. This leopard cat was obviously not the type to back down easily. Maybe to other people in the room, this leopard cat had been roaring inexplicably, but from the low growls of this leopard cat, Zheng Tan could tell that this guy had begun to change his mind. Just now, it was just purely vigilant, but gradually, it seemed to be suppressed by some kind of idea, and it began to have some provocative and aggressive intentions. Its ears were pulled back, and its whiskers were raised. When it growled, it opened its mouth and showed its fangs. Zheng Tan moved the tip of its tail, then raised its claw to push Tang Kai's hand away and stretched. Tang Kai was staring at the leopard cat nervously. When she felt her fingers being pushed away and saw Zheng Tan like this, she quickly stretched out her arm and blocked in front of Zheng Tan in a protective manner. She was afraid that the leopard cat would suddenly rush over. Although she didn't quite understand why the leopard cat would act like this, she, like everyone else in the room, consciously placed Zheng Tan in a vulnerable position. Zheng Tan was very grateful for Tang Kai's protective attitude, but he didn't want to be protected by a girl in this kind of situation. He raised his claw and pushed away the arm in front of him. Suddenly, Zheng Tan's movements paused. His nose twitched, and he looked at Tang Kai's arm. He saw a claw mark on the sleeve of her motorcycle uniform. The uniform had been clawed through. When Tang Kai had reached out to scratch Zheng Tan's chin, she hadn't touched this arm, so she hadn't noticed it. Moving closer and sniffing again, Zheng Tan looked at the leopard cat that was growling more and more fiercely. Originally, Zheng Tan had only wanted to slap it like last time to make it retreat, but he changed his mind at the last minute. When the leopard cat's growl suddenly changed, Zheng Tan knew that it couldn't hold back anymore. Almost at the same time that the leopard cat pounced over, Zheng Tan jumped up and dodged the sharp claws of the leopard cat. He didn't collide with it head-on but instead gave it a claw. The claws pierced through the fur and scratched against the resistance of the flesh. The smell of blood wafted over. Zheng Tan couldn't play with the combination of hugging, biting, kicking, and scratching like the sheriff and the other cats. He preferred simple and violent methods, like the slap last time and the claw this time. This time he didn't hit the cat, but there was blood. When they landed, the two cats were very close to each other. On the leopard cat's body, there was a scratch from its neck to its abdomen. Zheng Tan's claws were harder than the average cat's. In addition, Zheng Tan intended to make the cat bleed, so he stabbed deeper. The disadvantage of short-haired cats was that they were easily scratched in a fight. Those with longer and thicker fur could use their fur to reduce some of the claw's attacks. At most, they would only be plucked. Zheng Tan was prepared to attack again. If it weren't for the difference in size and the fact that he didn't jump too high, Zheng Tan could have started from the cat's head instead of the neck. However, the leopard cat retreated quickly. After realizing Zheng Tan's intention, it quickly jumped away and retreated in the direction of Anna. Although it was growling, it was much weaker. As the saying goes, a spurt of energy only to weaken the next. It had finally mustered up the courage to charge forward, but in the end it suffered another claw. Now it was beginning to feel afraid again. The leopard cat didn't have dark fur like Zheng Tan's. After the wound quickly oozed blood, the surrounding fur was dyed red. The wound was long, and blood had already dripped onto the carpet on the ground. Qin Tao and the others looked at this scene, and their jaws almost fell to the ground. With such an obvious difference in size, the result of this round was completely different from what they had expected. Anna was about to throw the wine glass in her hand at Zheng Tan, but she was stopped by Mao. The door of the private room opened, and the people Qin Tao had asked for help came in. Sister Xia was at the front. With so many people watching, Zheng Tan didn't continue to chase. Otherwise, he would give the impression that he was a fierce and dangerous creature. Zheng Tan didn't want to make more people afraid of him because of this leopard cat. That wasn't necessarily a good thing. Even so, everyone felt their hair stand on end. This black cat didn't bare its teeth or growl, but its eyes were terrifying. Qin Tao felt a chill on his back. When the people brought by Sister Xia separated the two cats, Zheng Tan stopped attacking and squatted there with an obedient look. Until Anna took the leopard cat away, Zheng Tan jumped on the sofa and lay down next to Tang Kai. Mao lifted Zheng Tan up and looked at him. Zheng Tan's fur was too dark. Even if he was injured, it couldn't be seen. After checking, Mao and Tang Kai didn't find any wounds. Only the claws were stained with blood. Tang Kai asked for a handkerchief and dipped it in some warm water to wipe Zheng Tan's claws. Zheng Tan let Tang Kai wipe the blood off his claws, thinking about something else. When they were fighting just now, they felt something strange, but they couldn't tell what it was. It seems that we didn't lose, Mao concluded. Qin Tao stood 1 meter away from Mao and Tang Kai. He didn't have the guts of Mao and Tang Kai. Earlier he had observed the wounds on the leopard cat's body at close range. If the black cat's paw was a little bigger, and its claws were a little longer, wouldn't it be able to directly cut open its stomach on the spot? Seeing that Zheng Tan wasn't injured, Mao was relieved. At the same time, he was glad that he didn't bring black rice this time. Otherwise it would definitely be cannon fodder. Although black rice was fierce and aggressive, its fighting power was not enough compared to these two. This was also the first time that Mao found that Zheng Tan's fighting power was different from that of ordinary cats. It seemed that he had to keep black rice away from this black coal in the future. Aren't you afraid of it? Mao asked Tang Kai, who was wiping Zheng Tan's claws. Don't be afraid, it helped me take revenge. Tang Kai laughed. Her smile was not as arrogant as usual. It was much gentler. Mao didn't speak again. Qin Tao called him again. It was not easy to come to a birthday party. Qin Tao didn't want to waste it because of a fight between two cats. Besides, for other people, cats were just cats. They were purely for fun. Although they were a little surprised, they wouldn't pay too much attention after the surprise. They had to hurry up and achieve their purpose of coming here. After Mao was pulled away, a girl hesitated and came over. She was a relative of Tang Kai and was now interning in Tang Kai's father's company. Perhaps because she saw that Zheng Tan was gentle and didn't seem to be a threat, she sat down on the sofa next to him. Tang Kai liked to talk about cats. The girl obviously knew Tang Kai's preferences and talked about cats. When they were talking about Anna's cat being trained to squat on the toilet, Tang Kai suddenly asked, her cat was specially trained. Seeing that Tang Kai was interested, the girl was very happy. If she could please Tang Kai, she would have a smoother time when she became a full-time employee in the company. I heard that the cat was given to Anna by a relative during the new year. However, this kind of big cat may have a bad temper. Anna's parents spent a lot of money to hire someone to train it. This cat is to be a pet, not to be used in the fighting field. If it was too rebellious, Anna wouldn't dare to bring it over. Oh, the squatting on the toilet was also trained at that time. That is to say, the cat won't attack people. Tang Kai lowered her head slightly, so that the people next to her couldn't see her eyes. Yes, if not, Anna's parents wouldn't allow her to keep the big cat by her side all day. If she accidentally scratched it and disfigured it, who would she cry to? The girl replied. Since it wouldn't scratch people without permission, then why did the big cat stretch out its claws to her in the bathroom? Without Anna's guidance, was it possible? Tang Kai looked at the claw marks on her sleeves and didn't say anything. The people next to her couldn't see Tang Kai's eyes, but Zheng Tan could see the anger in Tang Kai's eyes. If he wasn't by her side, Tang Kai's temper would probably explode again. Zheng Tan suddenly thought of the reason why he felt strange before. Compared to before, the leopard cat's wildness had faded a lot. Could it be because it had been trained? Had its wild nature been ground down? If it was fierce, it would be even fiercer after it was injured and saw blood. Of course, this was just Zheng Tan's guess. He didn't know the specific reason. At the end of the evening party, when Mao left with Zheng Tan, Tang Kai was still reluctant to part with them. Mao asked Qin Tao to leave 2 pieces of cake for the 2 children of the Jiao family. However, Mao didn't mention that Zheng Tan had scratched the cat in the fight. If he did, he wouldn't be able to invite the cat out next time. Besides, even if the people attending the party saw Zheng Tan outside, they might not be able to recognize him. On Sunday, Tang Kai invited Qin Tao and Mao to have dinner. The reason she called Mao was that she wanted it to bring Zheng Tan out. They just had dinner at a private restaurant that they often went to. After dinner, Mao took the initiative to invite them to the night building. It also invited a few people that it had met yesterday and had a good impression of. Zheng Tan didn't go with them. He didn't inform them in advance. If he went back late, the Jiaoma would nag him again. Zheng Tan was sent to the school gate. He didn't continue to delay and trotted back to the eastern courtyard. At this time, there weren't many people on the road in the eastern courtyard. In another half an hour, the teachers from the evening class and the office working overtime would come back. Zheng Tan was running. When he was about to reach the courtyard, he slowed down. There were 3 cats squatting in the middle of the road in front of him. Zheng Tan had never seen these 3 cats in the area. They were complete strangers. As Zheng Tan walked closer, the 3 cats still squatted in front of him and stared at Zheng Tan. The orange street lamp elongated the shadows of the 3 cats. In the distance, someone's cat was moving and howling. However, the 3 cats only moved their ears, as if they weren't interested in that. It was as if they only heard the rustling of the leaves around them. They still squatted there steadily. Zheng Tan was wondering where these 3 roadblocks came from when he suddenly heard a voice. Black charcoal. Chapter 183. Zheng Tan looked in the direction of the voice. The street lights didn't interfere with Zheng Tan's vision too much. After taking a closer look, he was sure that he had never seen this person before. The 3 cats blocking the way were obviously in cahoots with this man. But the question was, why did this man bring 3 cats here in the middle of the night? What was the meaning of this? It wasn't right to call it a gang fight, as there wasn't any murderous intent. Also, how did this person know his name? Although he didn't feel any hostility from this person and the 3 cats, Zheng Tan still maintained a high level of vigilance. This person looked a little strange, and the 3 cats were also strange. They were different from the cats that Zheng Tan usually interacted with. Zheng Tan and the person looked at each other, and at the same time, wondered if he should just ignore them and run home. I've heard so much about you, the person said again. Zheng Tan looked up. I've heard so much about you. Or can I call you Black Sea? The person's tone was very natural, as if they were chatting casually. The person said a few more words, but Zheng Tan didn't want to pay attention to him, nor did he want to look into the person's eyes. He felt that the person seemed to be able to see something from his eyes, and Zheng Tan was unhappy. Just as he was about to run away, he heard the person say, "Let's introduce ourselves first. Come Longden, you start." As he said that, the person snapped his fingers. The serious-looking cat with a white body and a black tail in the middle let out a meow. "Lotus seed," the person said again. Meow. The dragonly cat that was squatting on the right side closest to the road meowed. This dragonly cat's fur color was the same as Depang's, but it was different from Depang's. This dragonly cat looked thinner and more obedient, unlike Depang, who didn't have enough sleep and was not interested in anything. "Babeo," the person said. The cat that was squatting on the far left with its tail wagging, as if it was holding back its strength, opened its mouth. Meow. Zheng Tan was speechless. "All right, Babeo, shut up." The man snapped his fingers, and the cat named Babeo immediately stopped. He glanced at the man and wagged his tail. "Finally, let me introduce myself. My name is Awu." The man lifted his hand to lift the brim of his hat, and looked at Zheng Tan. When he was about to speak, he suddenly looked at the other side of the road. The ears of the 3 cats that were squatting at the same spot twitched. They were about to turn around to take a look, when a figure dashed over. It jumped over the 3 cats that were blocking the way and pounced on the person called Awu. Wu dodged nimbly and looked at the cat that was baring its teeth and growling at him, as if it was going to pounce on him again. Instead of getting angry, he smiled and said, "Hey fatty, you live here." Zheng Tan looked at Depang, who was growling at Wu fiercely and whose fur was about to explode. He was surprised. He rarely saw Depang like this, except for the few times when he was a thief and a cat trafficker. Today was the only time he had seen Depang like this. However, he had never acted like this before, as if he was facing an enemy. Looking at Wu and the three cats, and then looking at Depang, Zheng Tan was even more confused. Did they know each other? This guy called Wu obviously knew Depang, and Depang only took the initiative to attack him once when he rushed over and growled at him vigilantly. TSK, I haven't seen you for more than a year, and you've gotten fatter." Wu looked at Depang and did not care about Depang's threatening growl at all. He said slowly, "Haven't you had enough of the instant noodles?" Zheng Tan was surprised again. Not many people knew that Depang would be punished with instant noodles. Depang's old lady never told anyone about it. Since this guy knew about it, he must be an old friend of Depang. "Forget it, today's purpose has been achieved. Black charcoal, now that we know each other, I will come to see you when I have time." After a pause, Wu sighed and said, "Who on earth trained you to be like this? I really want to meet him." With that, the guy snapped his fingers again. "Longan, Lotus Seed, Babeo, let's go." The three cats who were blocking the road quickly followed. The cat called Babeo was probably going to walk over and say hello to Depang, but Depang was still highly vigilant and stared at Wu who was leaving, ignoring Babeo. Zheng Tan glanced around, climbed up a sycamore tree, and looked at Wu and the three cats who were leaving. The cat called Longan stood on the sidewalk and followed Wu closely. Lotus Seed jumped on Wu's shoulder and lay on it. From time to time, she stretched out her claws to hook Wu's felt hat. As for Babeo, that guy was energetically using the falling leaves as imaginary enemies and fluttering around. What a strange combination. Depang did not continue to bark, but his ears were still slightly pressed back, his body slightly bent, and he stared in the direction Wu left. Was this guy really scared? After Wu was out of sight, Zheng Tan jumped down from the tree, raised his paw, and patted Depang, asking him to return to the courtyard. Just now, Depang probably ran out from the balcony because he heard the cat called Babeo. If Depang had an impression of them, it would make sense for him to follow the sound. Moreover, Babeo's cry was too special. Although it was not as loud as Zheng Tan's, it was still full of ups and downs. Because of the incident with Wu, Zheng Tan went back and wondered who Wu was the whole night. He knew Depang, and he specially came to find him. Why? The next day, Ermao probably played too late last night, and was still sleeping at home. Zheng Tan did not see him open the door. Depang was still lying on his balcony, but he looked a little paranoid. Zheng Tan was more curious about what happened to this guy that caused him to be in such a state when he saw Wu last night. After dinner, Zheng Tan habitually walked outside. Now that the daytime was getting longer and the temperature was rising, many people would go out at night. Zheng Tan would also walk outside. The sun was hidden under the tall buildings, and the sky still had the afterglow of the sunset. Some people walked out of the courtyard one after another. Zheng Tan moved his ears. The sheriff was outside fighting with the cats in the west courtyard again. He lifted his foot, and was about to go over to check on the situation when he suddenly noticed something. Zheng Tan turned his head and looked at the green bushes. The cat called Longan stood there, and looked at Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan looked around and did not see the person called Wu, nor did he see the other two cats. Longan walked towards Zheng Tan, and stopped half a meter away from Zheng Tan. He looked at Zheng Tan, then walked in a direction. After 2 steps, he turned back to look at Zheng Tan, signaling for Zheng Tan to follow. Zheng Tan weighed the pros and cons in his heart, then lifted his foot and followed. Although he was not sure why Longan brought him there, as long as he was still at Tsinghua University, Zheng Tan was not that worried. In his heart, Zheng Tan had already regarded the Tsinghua University area as his own territory. Zheng Tan was very familiar with the path that Longan was walking on. He usually walked this way too. There were fewer people here, and it was a more secluded path. There were trees on both sides, and there was a small bamboo forest in front. The bamboos that grew on both sides of the path gradually gathered together 3 meters above the ground, forming an arched doorway. Under this arched doorway, there was a long wooden bench that was commonly seen in schools. During the summer, people often came here to hide from the sun and rest during the day. There were also students who came here to practice guitar or memorize English words. But at night, it was indeed a little gloomy because the street lights could only illuminate a small area under the arched doorway. They could not illuminate the people sitting on the bench. Even with the afterglow of the sunset, people could not see the situation under the arched doorway. At this time, very few people came here. Longin brought Zhengtan here. An object flew out from the bottom of the arch, and at the same time, a shadow shot out from it. When it passed by Zhengtan and Gui Yuan, it did not seem to have any intention of stopping. In its eyes, there was only the object that was thrown out from the arch. Zhengtan recognized that it was Babeo that he saw yesterday. It jumped up and caught a small frisbee. Babeo ran towards the arched doorway with the frisbee in its mouth. When it passed by Zhengtan, it only glanced at him before continuing to run back. The person sitting on the bench under the arched doorway was Wu. The dragonly cat, Lotus Seed, was lying on the side. When Longin came over, it jumped to Lotus Seed and squatted down seriously. "We meet again." Wu greeted Zhengtan. Then it took the frisbee that Babeo brought back. It patted Babeo's head and praised it. It raised its hand and threw the frisbee out. Babeo quickly turned around and ran out to catch the frisbee. This type of frisbee was smaller and softer, so it would not be too difficult for Babeo to catch it, and it would not hurt its teeth. After throwing the frisbee, Wu lowered its head and looked at Zhengtan, who was squatting 2 steps away. It patted the empty spot on the bench and said, "Come over and let's talk." Zhengtan did not move. He did not know anything about it. He would not stupidly walk so close to it. Wu took out some food, but Zhengtan ignored it. After distributing the food in his hand to his 3 cats, Wu patted the crumbs on his hands and looked at the black cat that was still standing there vigilantly. When he saw the black cat for the first time yesterday, he knew that he could not approach it in a normal way. So he did not take out many things to tease the cat. Plus, Depang the fatty was there to stir things up, so he went back first. "Can you understand what I'm saying?" Wu suddenly asked. Zhengtan turned his head to avoid looking at Wu directly. "It seems that I can understand," Wu said with some emotion. Although he looked calm on the surface, in his heart, Wu was much more excited. Anna's leopard cat was trained by him. Yesterday he heard that the leopard cat was defeated by a black cat, which aroused his curiosity. After asking someone to investigate, he became even more interested. He also bought cat food for Black Sea to shoot an advertisement. In fact, he came here just to see how the cat was trained. Wu did not think that the black cat was gifted. He only thought that it was the result of the training of an excellent cat trainer. As a cat trainer who thought that he was good, it was rare for Wu to meet a worthy opponent. Wu then said something and asked some questions. Zhengtan just stood there and did not show any reaction to Wu's words. And Zhengtan was scared by Wu's words. But Zhengtan decided to pretend that he did not know anything. No matter what Wu said, he would pretend that he did not understand anything. After Wu talked to himself for a while, he remained silent for 2 minutes. Then, he threw the frisbee that Babao brought back and said calmly, "When I was young, I saw my master scolding his cat. However, his cat looked innocent and confused. So I told my master, 'They don't understand anyway. It's a waste of your saliva to say so much.' My master sneered and said, 'It understands. It may even understand every word I just said. It has already recorded it in its mind. It is just pretending that it does not know anything.'" Chapter 184. No matter what Wu said, even if he pointed it out, Zhengtan decided to play along until the end. After all, he was just a cat now. Besides, Zhengtan didn't have a good impression of Wu. Zhengtan always felt uncomfortable here. Therefore, just as Wu was feeling proud, Zhengtan turned around and left without looking back. Ignoring Wu's shouts, Zhengtan quickened his pace and ran towards the eastern courtyard. The next time he saw the 3 cats, he would ignore them. Zhengtan was not afraid of Wu spouting nonsense. Even if Wu did, no one would believe him. Even if they did, they would not believe him completely. After all, many intelligent animals that had lived with humans for a long time could understand some simple sentences. Zheng Tan kept a low profile in front of most people. Those who knew about Zheng Tan would not betray him, so what was there to be afraid of? On Friday night, Celestine drove over to take Zheng Tan and Mao to the night building. Walnut, who hadn't been seen for a long time, happened to be free today. The three of them gathered together, and Zheng Tan hitched a ride. The three of them were very casual, unlike the people Zheng Tan had seen at the birthday banquet last time. They wore masks and acted carefully. When the three of them were peeling peanuts, they very consciously peeled some for Zheng Tan's plate. Therefore, Zheng Tan only needed to sit down and wait to eat. She listened to the live performance outside, and when she was full, she would lie on the sofa and take a nap. However, when Zheng Tan heard Celestine and the other two talking about cat trainers, his sleepiness suddenly disappeared. The conversation started with the case that Walnut had mentioned that was under investigation. In fact, there were some theft cases before the new year, but everyone thought that it was probably because the new year was approaching, and that all the bad guys came out to get some New Year's money. Many people heard about it and didn't really take it to heart. In the past, this kind of thing was common, and Walnut and the others attributed the reason to some people with criminal records. Those people were just fined or thrown in jail for a while after being caught, which was not a big deal. However, after the new year, the number of people reporting cases continued to increase. The number was much higher than the same period in previous years. If it wasn't a coincidence, Walnut Sr. would only think that it was because those who had left a criminal record were getting restless. Cat. Mao was so surprised that he dropped the peanuts he was peeling. Yes, there's a bookstore opposite the owner's house. Although it's not big, the owner of the bookstore has some money. Because he hasn't been feeling well recently, he can't be bothered to keep an eye on the people in the store, so he installed some cameras. There's also one at the entrance of the store, but it's not too eye-catching. It's just been installed a few days ago, so many people around don't know about it. One of my men was just lucky at the time. After seeing it, he asked the shop owner for the latest surveillance video. As he spoke, Walnut took out a photo. Zheng Tan leaned forward to take a look. The surveillance footage wasn't very good, and it couldn't be compared to the surveillance cameras of banks and some large companies. However, he could indeed see a blurry figure in this photo. There was an object in front of it, which should be the stolen item. With this size and agility, it could only be a cat. I suppressed this matter and didn't spread it. The owner of the bookstore doesn't know about it either. The image was very short and dark. If you don't look carefully, no one will pay attention to a cat. Walnut Sr. continued to talk about his suspicions. He felt that some of the reported crimes were committed by cats, and even if cats were smart, they wouldn't be like Zheng Tan, unless they were specially trained. When Zheng Tan saw this photo, he immediately thought of Wu. Could it be him? However, the cat in the photo didn't look like one of the three cats, Longan, Lotus Seed, or Babeo. Just as Zheng Tan was puzzled, Walnut Sr. also mentioned Wu's name. It turned out that Wu had accepted a job and came to Chuhua City. Originally, Wu had only planned to stay in Chuhua City for a while and leave after completing the job. He didn't expect to be found by the police. The job he accepted was probably to train the leopard cat. He is indeed one of the suspects. However, although Wu hasn't been cleared of suspicion, he seems to be very interested in this matter and offered to assist in the investigation. Of course, he hasn't been cleared yet, and we haven't really told him about the progress of the investigation. Until now, he is still in Chuhua City. Most of the time, we can't find him, and the people who were sent to follow him were also shaken off by him. However, he has been taking 3 cats with him, and they are very distinctive. He only comes out at night, and, after a pause, Walnut Sr. sighed. I don't think it was Wu who instigated the cat theft. He is a bit arrogant and doesn't lack money. I asked someone to investigate his income, and it makes me want to learn how to train cats. The second half of the sentence was obviously a joke. There were many people who trained dogs, but very few who trained cats. Cats had bad tempers. Otherwise, cats were the only domesticated animals that humans hadn't completely conquered. How many years had it been since cats entered human society? As Zheng Tan was thinking, He also paid attention to the conversation between Walnut Sr. and the others. I once asked Wu, and he said that there are indeed some cats who have a hobby of stealing, and they prefer to find some cats with special talents to train and stimulate their strengths. The cat that stole was probably trained by someone who was interested in cat training. That cat trainer called Wu. Doesn't he know the cat trainers in this province? Then he should be considered someone in their circle, Mao Er asked. Walnut Sr. shook his head, and then said with an unnatural expression, I also called the master to ask. Hearing this, Celestine and Mao Er looked at Walnut Sr. with a look that said, You're asking for trouble. The master doesn't seem to have a good impression of cat trainers, and he also said that at most, he is teaching and guiding Mountain, and not trying to force Mountain to correct some of his bad temperaments, Walnut said. That's for sure. Mountain's bad temperament is definitely not trained. Mao Er sneered. Mountain's bad temperament was definitely learned from the people around him in his daily life, especially the master. Celestine didn't say anything, but when he heard Walnut ask about the master's cat trainers, he curled his lips, probably saying bad things in his heart. Mao Er peeled 2 peanuts and threw them into his mouth. I will pay attention to the surroundings and see which cat is more suspicious, but I don't want to meet that cat called Wu. Recently, Mao Er would take Black Rice out for a walk, but he didn't want the cat trainers to see his cat. He felt that his Black Rice was the kind of cat that Walnut Sr. had said was talented and smart, so he had to protect it well. Cat trainers? Who knew what they would do? Then you can rest assured that Wu won't go to Tsinghua University, at least not in the near future, Walnut Sr. said. Why? This time, even Celestine was curious. Walnut smiled. That fat cat called Depeng, its father, went to find Wu 2 days ago and warned him not to go near Tsinghua University. Also, more than a year ago, Depeng's cat father seemed to be one of the reasons why Wu left Tsinghua City. Depeng's cat father? Mao Er was confused, and then suddenly understood. Then he began to sigh. These days, cats were more arrogant than people. Because of his father's heavy responsibility, Mao Er had done some research on some of the big shots in the province. When he rented the house in the eastern courtyard, he had done some research on the residents, especially the residents in Building B. Celestine had specially mentioned the fat dragon Li's family. At that time, Mao Er had sighed that this seemingly ordinary courtyard was full of hidden talents. So he often helped Depeng's old lady to move things and earn some favor. Zheng Tan was thinking, no wonder he hadn't seen Wu at Tsinghua University since that day. Zheng Tan thought that Wu had given up on provoking him. But now it seemed that it was Depeng's cat father's credit. Thinking of this, Zheng Tan couldn't help but sigh in his heart again. This was an era where people relied on their fathers. Even cats joined in. In fact, when Walnut Sr. had heard the reason from Wu, he had also sighed with emotion. These days, many cats were indeed more arrogant than humans. For example, Fatty, and the black cat in front of him, who knew what it was thinking with its head down. After learning the reason why Wu stayed in Tsinghua City from Walnut Sr., Zheng Tan also paid attention to the surroundings to see if there were any strange and suspicious cats. After a comfortable weekend, early on Monday morning, Zheng Tan was picked up from the Jiao family by Xiaogua. There was a task today. As the vice president of the Green Wings Association, Xiaogua was to take the pet center's advertising team out to shoot a public service advertisement to help the Green Wings Association feel its existence and increase its influence within the association. Zheng Tan was undoubtedly Xiaogua's trump card. Today they chose a place with good scenery that was 30 minutes drive away from Tsinghua University. It was close to a lake. As they had informed the person in charge here, they had surrounded the area in advance. When Zheng Tan arrived, he saw that a lot of things were ready. The public service advertisement to be shot today was to tell people about the dangers of chocolate and some strong stimulants to pets. And there were some difficult scenes such as pretending to faint, pretending to vomit, and so on. Among the cats, only Zheng Tan could take the lead, and the rest of Xiaogua's pet center were responsible for acting cute. From Zheng Tan's point of view, these advertisements were very childish and relatively rough, but after all, it was only a pet public service advertisement. People's tolerance for pets on the screen was always much greater than people's. However, adhering to the principle of professionalism, Zhang Ten also added a few scenes of himself twitching a few times during the shooting. It scared the filming crew so much that their faces turned pale, and they broke out in a cold sweat. They were afraid that the fake scene would become real, or else Xiaoguo would directly fire them. Everyone knew that boss Xiaoguo regarded this black cat as the fortune cat of the entire pet center. It was not to be provoked or hurt. In general, it was as smooth as usual when shooting advertisements at the pet center, so Zhang Tan's side was quickly finished, and the people responsible for the pet dog's side were only 1/3 of the way through. The working group still had to continue here. Xiaoguo, the vice president, was very busy. After coming here, there was no sign of him. No one knew who he was negotiating with. The person who was entrusted by Xiaoguo to take care of Zhang Tan was a young man in his early 20s named Charlie. It was a pity that Zhang Tan was not a girl. Charlie was definitely a native, but because of his name, his surname Charlie was often mispronounced. He was poached by Xiaoguo from Agricultural University this year. He majored in animal medicine and was about to graduate. Recently, he had been doing an internship at the pet center. Today, he was called over to help. Charlie was in charge of taking care of Zhang Tan. Little Guo had already told Charlie about the things he had to pay attention to. For example, the disposable paper cups used to hold water had to be clean and unused, and the food should not contain cat biscuits or cat food. When Charlie first saw the food given to Zhang Tan, he had warned her about the dangers. However, he later realized that this cat was indeed unique, so he did not mention it. Today he would not mention it either. Moreover, he had to do it discreetly. This went against the public service advertisement that day. Charlie was not experienced enough, so he felt a little guilty. Zhang Tan did not want to stay here all the time, and was ready to go out for a walk. Charlie had just been called over to help, and no one in the rest area was watching Zhang Tan. It was not easy to come here, so it was good to see the scenery. Coming out from under the cloth fence, Zhang Tan saw a small pine forest, and was ready to walk over. As soon as he walked into the pine forest, he heard a sound. When he looked over, Zhang Tan saw a yellow figure flash by. However, after noticing Zhang Tan's existence, the other party paused for a short time, looked at Zhang Tan, and then quickly left. It was a cat that looked very similar to Huang, but Huang did not have such sharp eyes. Chapter 185. The cat quickly disappeared into the pine forest, and Zhang Tan didn't plan to chase it. Catching thieves was the police's job, and it was Walnut's job. Zhang Tan wasn't in the mood to meddle in other people's business. Compared to the central city, the air here was much better. There was a large green forest around, plus a lake. There wasn't much sewage and laboratory wastewater, so the environmental quality was immediately improved. No wonder many people liked to come here to relax. Xiaoguo didn't choose this place for no reason. Even if it was a pet public service announcement, it had to be carefully packaged, right? Otherwise, Xiaoguo, the vice president, wouldn't feel good. As he walked and thought, Zhang Tan heard Charlie shouting over there. He probably found that Zhang Tan wasn't there and was anxious. Charlie was very regretful now. He thought that it would be fine to leave for only 5 minutes, but when he came back, he didn't see Zhang Tan's shadow. If he lost this cat, Charlie wouldn't be able to survive in Chuhua City in the future. Boss Xiaoguo would never let him go. While Charlie and a few people in the group were anxiously looking for Zhang Tan slowly walked out of the pine forest. Seeing that the cat wasn't lost, Charlie and the others were relieved and no longer left Zhang Tan's surroundings. Even if the others were busy, they wouldn't ask Charlie to help. Otherwise, if they lost the cat, they would be one of the sinners of the pet center. Being stared at like this, Zhang Tan couldn't be in the mood to go anywhere. He lay down and took a nap, waiting for the pet dog's shooting to end before he went back. He went straight back to the pet center. Zhang Tan had to wait at the pet center for a while. Xiaoguo was busy with a few urgent matters at hand, and then sent Zhang Tan back to the courtyard. Xiaoguo wouldn't be at ease if he didn't send him back personally. During this time, Zhang Tan and the few pets that went out for the shooting would be checked together. This was a new rule made by Xiaoguo to prevent cats and dogs from being infected with certain germs outside, and bringing them into the pet center to infect more pets. If the pets were unwell, they could be found in advance. After all, pets weren't humans. Not everyone knew how to express their discomfort. When Zheng Tan was being checked, he saw a familiar face next door. Sahara's dog father had brought it over for an injection. Sahara was probably a little sick. During the injection, it buried its head in its father's arms and whined like a spoiled child. Zheng Tan strongly despised him. F***ck, wasn't it just poking a needle? Where did the courage that he usually had go? Back in the eastern courtyard, Zheng Tan looked at the wall clock in the living room. It was only 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He turned on the computer and did some research. He found some cat friends on the forum complaining that some cats like to go to other people's houses to pick up things. Someone also posted a video link. It was a video that the cat friend had secretly taken of his cat bringing back a stuffed animal from God knows where in the middle of the night. If a cat with such talent was trained by those cat trainers, what would it become? Zheng Tan couldn't figure it out. He thought about the cat he saw today. He didn't dare to say anything else, but the person who trained the cat definitely didn't lack money. In the forum, someone who studied law replied, "If it's just an animal stealing, it's an animal's instinct and not a crime. However, the animal's breeder or owner should bear the obligation to compensate for the loss of other people's property due to poor management of the animal. If the animal is professionally trained and steals, it's still not a crime for the animal. However, for the person who instigated the animal, it's a classic case of using the animal as a tool to steal and secretly stealing other people's property. This constitutes theft in the criminal law." There were too many similar discussions. However, in real life, there were more and more people who took advantage of loopholes. However, Zheng Tan was just curious. As long as it didn't happen to him or his Jiao family, Zheng Tan didn't bother to spend too much time on it. After turning off the computer and erasing some of the more obvious traces, Zheng Tan went to the balcony. As soon as he walked out, he heard the bird on the 4th floor singing again. Zheng Tan didn't know why that B***TCH bird was so addicted to singing these days, but he really didn't want to suffer here. He really didn't know how the other people in the building endured it. Maybe the old men and women in the building liked this kind of music? Zheng Tan slept outside for a long time and couldn't stay idle at home. In the end, he decided to go out for a walk and pick up little Pomelo when he came back. Zheng Tan hadn't been to the construction site for a long time, so he decided to take a look. He walked past Jiaoyuan's school. The teachers in Jiaoyuan were on the podium talking about the shortcomings of their country's education and criticizing examination-oriented education. Zheng Tan wagged his tail. He was too lazy to listen to these kinds of words. What was the use of just talking about it? He continued to trot forward. The construction site was still surrounded by blue buildings, but the building that was built inside could not be blocked. The progress was not bad. He hoped that this place could be completed soon and Zheng Tan would have another place for entertainment. As he was looking, Zheng Tan suddenly heard someone calling his name. He turned his head and saw Zhong Yan, who he hadn't seen for a while, walking over with a bunch of unknown things in his hands. Zheng Tan didn't expect to meet Zhong Yan at this time today. Looking at the time, it seemed that this child was indeed on his monthly break. Before every break in the 3rd year of high school, there was a mock exam. However, Zhong Yan didn't look like he was under too much pressure. "Hey, why are you here today?" Zhong Yan walked to the side. He had originally planned to rest at the side, and didn't expect to see Zheng Tan first. Zhong Yan went into the temporary rest area to get some water. He found a place to sit down, drank 2 mouthfuls of water, and handed another disposable plastic cup to Zheng Tan. Then he talked to Zheng Tan about something. "Do you know a cat came to the construction site recently? It looks like you and is also completely black. At first, Brother Ning and others thought it was you. They served it with good food and drinks, but in the end, I recognized it." Zhong Yan was quite proud when he talked about this. That black cat usually comes at night and leaves after walking around. Brother Ning and others said that there was probably a mouse at the construction site that attracted the cat. But I think that cat doesn't look like a stray cat. That black cat is very vigilant and fierce. Brother Ning and others were scratched when they played with it. I heard that someone at the construction site wanted to trap the cat and cook it after knowing that it wasn't you, but he didn't succeed. Zheng Tan didn't take it seriously at first. It was just a cat that looked like him. It was no big deal. There were many black cats. However, Zhong Yan's next sentence made Zheng Tan's heart tremble. Speaking of which, something happened at the construction site recently. Several people's wallets were missing. I heard that they were drunk and didn't pay attention. It's estimated that someone took them. Now everyone hides their wallets well. Alas, the construction site is like this. It's very messy. Zhong Yan sighed. Zheng Tan didn't know if he was overthinking. When Zhong Yan talked about this, the first thing that came to his mind was that the black cat was related to the missing wallets. Maybe he was overthinking. After listening to the conversation of Brother Walnut and others that day and seeing a cat steal wallets, Zheng Tan now thought that it might be a cat that stole wallets. Moreover, Zhong Yan just said that a black cat that looked like him often came here. Whether he was overthinking or not, Zheng Tan decided to be careful. That cat looked like him. If it really stole things like the cat he saw in the morning, and it was seen doing bad things, wouldn't he be blamed for it? Zheng Tan absolutely didn't want to be the scapegoat. In order to prevent accidents, Zheng Tan decided to be vigilant of other black cats. Zhong Yan quickly returned to the construction site to work. Zheng Tan also walked back. At the same time, he also paid attention to the cats around him. He didn't find a black cat like him. It probably wasn't time yet, so the cat didn't come out. That day, after dinner, Jiao Ma was called by her colleagues to dance in the school square. The temperature wasn't low now, so they didn't stay in the gymnasium. They went directly to the square to dance. There were quite a few teachers there. Zheng Tan saw that the sheriff was fighting with the cats in the western compound. He followed them all the way to the square, and thought that he might as well go find Jiao Ma later. Although Jiao Ma was on the square, Jiao Ma had acquaintances in the gymnasium. Her bags and cups were all in the cabinet in the gymnasium. Zheng Tan just had to wait at the entrance of the gymnasium. Zheng Tan was about to walk in that direction when suddenly, a shadow ran across the road from not far in front of him. The shadow ran from the left near the square to the green belt on the right. Stopping, Zheng Tan paused for 2 seconds, then turned and followed the shadow. Zheng Tan heard the rustling sound coming from the small forest. It was the sound of something running in the forest and rubbing against the rye grass on the ground. Although it was night time, Zheng Tan could see the situation in the small forest with the help of the surrounding street lights. However, the growing rye grass and some trees in the forest obstructed Zheng Tan's vision. Fortunately, the trees here were thick enough and the spacing was just right. Therefore, Zheng Tan directly jumped on a tree and ran through the mountain of branches. This skill wasn't practiced for nothing. Intuition was sometimes very accurate. Zheng Tan saw a cat in the rye grass not far in front of him. The cat raised its head and let Zheng Tan see the wallet in its mouth. However, he couldn't see what color the cat was, so he didn't know if it was the black cat that Zhong Yan mentioned. Zheng Tan didn't expect to encounter this kind of thing again so soon. Although it was none of his business, he didn't want to be slandered. Regardless of whether it was the black cat that looked like him, Zheng Tan decided to beat it up first. Besides, Zheng Tan had taken Tsinghua University as his own territory. If he didn't teach it a lesson, Zheng Tan wouldn't be able to say that he was the boss here. The sound of Zheng Tan jumping on the branches was also heard by the cat. It sped up a little, but it didn't seem to be in a hurry. It probably felt that a cat wasn't as threatening as a human. After approaching the cat from above, Zheng Tan jumped down, pounced on it, and directly clawed at it. The cat was slapped to the side and rolled twice. The wallet in its mouth also fell into the rye grass. After it got up, it angrily growled at Zheng Tan a few times. It seemed like it wanted to fight with him, but it quickly ran away. Zheng Tan wanted to continue chasing, but at this time, the sheriff and the cat from the western compound were fighting all the way here. When the sheriff saw Zheng Tan, he happily ran over to greet him and interrupted Zheng Tan for a while. Without the burden of the purse, the cat ran away quickly and soon disappeared out of the forest. The sheriff didn't realize that he had done something wrong. After being slapped by Zheng Tan, he was still a little stunned. However, he quickly continued to fight with the cat from the western compound. They fought all the way out of the small forest. Chapter 186. Zheng Tan was the only one left in the woods. Just as he was about to leave, Zheng Tan remembered that the stolen wallet was still in the grass. He ran over to take a look. Since it was very dark, no one would pay attention to him. Zheng Tan simply stood up, picked up the wallet with his 2 front paws, and slowly walked to the edge of the woods. Zheng Tan didn't want to take the wallet for himself, nor was he interested in opening it to see what was inside. Although he didn't take a closer look at the wallet, he could tell from the fragrance that it was a woman's wallet. As one of the greening plants on campus, although the effect of the ryegrass was good, Zheng Tan didn't like to move around in the grass. The feeling of the grass scraping against his body was very uncomfortable. Zheng Tan looked around. There weren't many people walking on the path beside the small woods at this time. When Zheng Tan walked to the edge, he happened to see an old man who was guarding the door of the teaching building, holding a radio and humming opera songs as he passed by. When he was wandering around the school, Zheng Tan also identified the gatekeepers of the teaching buildings and departments. Although he didn't know what the old man's character was like, Zheng Tan just wanted to quickly get rid of the wallet in his hand. While the old man was humming and shaking his head and not paying attention, Zheng Tan threw the wallet in the old man's path, then returned to the woods and climbed up a tree to look over there. The old man probably just went out for a walk. After he picked up the wallet, he mumbled something. He looked around and didn't see anyone nearby, so he walked towards the square. Zheng Tan followed not far behind him. He saw the old man walk to the gate of the stadium next to the square. He came to the bulletin board and wrote, "Lost and Found" with a pen, then talked to the security guard there. After dealing with the wallet, Zheng Tan squatted on a decorative stone platform at the gate of the stadium. "Hey, what's up with that cat?" The old man pointed at Zheng Tan, wondering why there was a cat sitting there so calmly. It must be known that the square was very lively, and the sound of music could be heard from here. The entrance of the gymnasium was also crowded with students and teachers who came here to exercise and relax, but this cat was not afraid at all. The security guard at the door looked back and said, "It's Ms. Gu's cat. It's waiting for Ms. Gu to finish her dance." This piqued the old man's interest. He pulled the security guard aside and told him about Zheng Tan until Jiao Ma finished her dance and came over to get her bag and cup. Jiao Ma was very proud when she heard other people praise her cat. That night, when she brought Zheng Tan home, the smile on her face never disappeared. Zheng Tan did not take these compliments to heart. He was thinking about the cat. Ever since he found out that the cat thief had put its claws into Tsinghua University, Zheng Tan had been vigilant for the next few days. When he went out in circles, he also paid attention to the cats he did not know. However, the cat that was scratched by him did not appear again. That day, because the weather forecast said that it would rain at night, but he did not know when it would rain, Zheng Tan stayed at home after dinner. However, he felt a little restless. Zheng Tan looked at the darkening sky outside. It seemed to be getting dark earlier than 2 days ago. It was probably because of the weather that the clouds covered the sunset. After enjoying the breeze on the balcony for a while, Zheng Tan returned to the living room. He lay on the sofa and watched cartoons with little Pomelo. Jiao Ma was washing the dishes and Jiao Yuan was playing on the computer in the room. At around 10 o'clock at night, it started to rain. Soon, the sound of raindrops hitting the window could be heard, and thunder rumbled. Zheng Tan nestled next to little Pomelo, and was thinking about something in a daze. His ears twitched, and he heard the sound of the phone ringing in the master bedroom. Who would call in this kind of weather? Did they not know that it was dangerous? Although the buildings here were all equipped with lightning rods, it could not guarantee 100% safety. Because of the thunder and rain outside, Zheng Tan did not hear what Jiao Ma said on the phone. After waiting for a while, he did not hear any sound from Jiao Ma's side. He guessed that she was probably asleep. Zheng Tan lifted his paw and rubbed his ears. Then he crawled under the blanket and began to sleep. Zheng Tan did not sleep well that night. For some reason he could not sleep well. When he woke up early in the morning to eat breakfast, Jiao Ma asked Zheng Tan, "Where's black charcoal? Do you know where the sheriff went?" Zheng Tan was about to eat the egg in his bowl when he heard Jiao Ma's words. His heart skipped a beat. Although the sheriff liked to go out and visit people, he always came home on time. He rarely stayed out for a whole night. Also, the weather last night was like that. According to his usual habits, he should have come home early. Seeing that her cat was staring at her blankly, Jiao Ma sighed in her heart. She felt that her cat probably did not understand what she meant, so she did not say anything more. When Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo asked, Jiao Ma did not say much. She only told the two children to focus on their studies and not worry about other things. Zheng Tan did not have much of an appetite. No wonder he had a bad feeling since yesterday. Afraid that Jiao Ma would notice something, Zheng Tan forced himself to swallow the egg and noodles in the bowl. He had to eat to have the energy to go out and do things. Before they left, Jiao Ma reminded Zheng Tan to go home after he dropped off little Pomelo, and not to run around. Jiao Ma wanted to keep her cat at home, but unfortunately she could not. In the end, it was Jiao Pa's fault. He gave the cat the key to the front door and the access card. Which cat would have these things? Jiao Ma could not tell anyone about these troubles. Just like Jiao Pa said, it was not a good thing to stand out too much. Sigh, it was not easy to have a cat that was too smart at home. After Zheng Tan dropped off little Pomelo, he wandered around, looking for places where the gossipy aunties gathered to eavesdrop. It did not take Zheng Tan long to learn the reason why Jiao Ma had asked him that during breakfast from a few aunties who had just come back from grocery shopping. At around 9 o'clock last night, a teacher in the western compound found her cat seriously injured on the side of the road. There were scratches and bites all over its body, and its fur was covered in blood. The teacher turned on the flashlight and found that the blood extended from the side of the road into the forest. It seemed that her cat had crawled out of the forest. She hurriedly sent the cat to the 24-hour outpatient department at the pet center. After checking the injuries and making sure that the cat was not in any danger, the teacher was relieved. If her cat had not been lucky enough to run into her, it would have been dead by the time it rained for another half an hour. After settling her cat down, the teacher was filled with anger. The vet had said that the injuries on her cat were caused by the cat's scratches and bites. Usually, the only cat that was at odds with her cat was the sheriff in the east courtyard. It was fine if they fought in the past since both of them had minor injuries, but this time it was too much. Therefore, the teacher went to the sheriff's house to ask for an explanation. However, the sheriff did not come back, even when it started to rain. Now the sheriff's owner also realized that something was wrong. It was common for cats to get scratches when they fought outside. The sheriff's owner was used to it, but his cat had always been in good spirits. Even if it went out to play at night, it would come home on time. Usually, at 9 or 10 o'clock, it would bark at the door of the family building, asking the owner to open the door. The peak period for missing cats during Chinese New Year had passed. Because of this, the sheriff's owner did not take it to heart. Who knew that something like this would happen? Everyone guessed that another cat had entered the school. Since the cat's claws were so fierce, it could not be a cat from the school. Otherwise, how could the school have been so quiet before? After learning the whole story, Zheng Tan was also worried. No wonder the sheriff's owner called everywhere to ask for help when it was so late last night. It was said that he even went out in the rain to look for the cat. It was past 12 o'clock, but he could not find the cat. This morning, when the rain stopped, the sheriff did not come back. The sheriff's owner also went to the school security office to ask for the surveillance video. The surveillance cameras in the school were not just for decoration, but the places with cameras were crowded and frequented, not the areas where cats were active. Many people said in private that the sheriff might not be able to come back. Zheng Tan felt that this matter had something to do with the cat that had been scratched by him. When the cat left, it growled and looked at him. He could tell that it was not a kind cat. Moreover, Zheng Tan guessed that there should be more than one cat. If there was only one cat, the cat in the west side courtyard would not have been injured so badly and almost died. The sheriff was still nowhere to be seen. These two cats were considered experts in the east and west side courtyard. Ordinary cats could not do anything to them. The rain last night washed away some of the scents, so it was impossible for Zheng Tan to find any suspicious scents. If the sheriff was only caught by the mastermind of the cat thief, the cat trainer that he had not met yet, he should at least be safe for the time being. Walnut had said that cat trainers would be interested in talented cats. The sheriff was indeed talented. A cat that could roar in the Chihuahua language so fluently was a wonder among cats. But if the cat trainer didn't discover the sheriff's talent, and allowed his cat to kill the sheriff, Zheng Tan searched several green forest areas, which were also the places where the sheriff often fought. In a nearby forest where the cat in the west side courtyard was found, Zheng Tan smelled some scents. There were the scents of the sheriff, the cat in the west side courtyard, the cat that he had scratched, and at least 3 other unfamiliar cat scents. Unfortunately, he could not find anything else outside the forest. If only it had not rained last night. After a round of searching, Zheng Tan leaned against a large sycamore tree and panted in frustration. Although the sheriff was just a cat, ever since Zheng Tan had turned into a cat, the 4 scumbags of the east side courtyard could be considered a small group. The sheriff was also regarded by Zheng Tan as an important playmate and a cat brother. Now that her brother was in trouble, Zheng Tan could not stay calm. Her worry overshadowed her anger. Even when she searched through the woods, Zheng Tan's heart was in her throat. She was afraid that she would see a cat with a stiff body in the woods. Scratching his ears in annoyance, Xian swung his tail on a thick branch, making a sound. On the bright side, if the sheriff had not been caught, or if he had not been injured to the point that he could not run, or if he had found a chance to escape when he was attacked, where would he hide? Although the sheriff was not very smart, he was not stupid. The swinging of his tail gradually decreased, and the tip of his tail moved rhythmically. Zheng Tan thought about the possible hiding places of the sheriff. The sheriff was also active in the campus, so he should be familiar with the place. Zheng Tan began to think about the possible hiding places one by one. Suddenly, Zheng Tan thought of a place that the sheriff often went to, the old tiled housing area in the campus. When the weather was good, it was a small gathering place for cats. Chapter 187. Because it had just rained, the old tile-roofed housing area was damp. Zheng Tan didn't see a single cat when he came over. It really wasn't a good day to take a nap on the roof. After getting the car, Zheng Tan didn't come here as often. Occasionally, he would take a stroll to see Jiao Wei and the others play with their model cars and planes. Jumping onto a relatively tall tree, Zheng Tan looked around the area and excluded the few tile-roofed houses that were often occupied by students. But before that, Zheng Tan took a deep breath. "Awo," he howled a few times in a row. The few cats in the east courtyard knew his howls. If the sheriff was here, it would be best if he could hear it and run out. Although the possibility wasn't high, it was still worth a try. After he finished howling, he didn't hear the sheriff's response. Instead, a few students who were holding some kind of activity in a tile-roofed house pushed open the window and cursed. F***CK, which psycho is howling in the middle of the day? They only thought that it was someone who was bored or playing a prank. They didn't associate it with a cat at all. Zheng Tan didn't have time to argue with those students. He didn't see the sheriff, nor did he hear its howls. It was either because it wasn't here, or it couldn't hear, or it couldn't move. It was 50-50. If there was a possibility, he had to try. And he had to hurry. With the cat in the west courtyard injured, Zheng Tan didn't dare to wait any longer. Although the rain washed away a lot of the smell on the ground, he could still smell something when he was near the old tile-roofed houses. After eliminating some parts, Zheng Tan began to search one by one. The black figure moved among the old tile-roofed houses. From time to time, it would stop at some windowsills or doors with holes, rust, and cracks that hadn't been opened for a long time. Then it would immediately run to the next tile-roofed house. When he found the 8th tile-roofed house, Zheng Tan found some bloodstains at the door. The ones further away were probably washed away by the rain, but there were obvious bloody cat footprints at the door. Zheng Tan sniffed. It was indeed the sheriff, but the doors and windows of this tile-roofed house were too tightly shut. The sheriff should have only stayed here for a short while before leaving. However, following these sporadic bloodstains and faint smells, Zheng Tan found another tile-roofed house not far from here. The door of this tile-roofed house was a wooden door. There was a gap in the lower right corner of the door. There was blood around the gap. Judging from the smell, it was the sheriff. Zheng Tan gave it a try and was able to squeeze through the gap. There were some old tables, chairs, and cabinets in the old tiled house. They were probably discarded from the cafeteria and some teaching buildings. They had been locked here for a long time, and had not been touched for a long time. They were covered in dust, and there were many cobwebs in the corners. Moving his nose, Zheng Tan followed the smell, and found the sheriff lying under a table. Zheng Tan did not know what the wounds on the cat in the west side courtyard looked like, but he could tell from the sheriff's body that the fight last night was very fierce. What made Zheng Tan relieved was that the sheriff was still alive, but his condition was not very good. He raised his paw and gently pushed the sheriff. There was no response, but his ears moved slightly. Next to the sheriff, there was a rat with a broken body. It looked quite fresh. It probably bumped into the sheriff's mouth last night. It was only because it had replenished some energy that the sheriff was able to maintain his current condition. It seemed that the sheriff could not move around on his own. Zhang Tan could move him out, but he could not carry the sheriff all the way to the pet center, right? Not to mention the headlines. It would take a lot of time to carry him all the way to the pet center. Also, he did not know if the sheriff could be moved around in his current condition. He had to find someone to help him. Zhang Tan moved the sheriff out a little. The gap in the door was still too small, and Zhang Tan could not move the sheriff out in this small gap. After jumping out and looking around to make sure that there was no one around the tiled house, Zhang Tan jumped up and lifted his foot to kick the door. He did not kick at the door lock, but at the gap. After a kick, a piece of wood fell from the gap, and the hole became bigger. He moved the sheriff to the side of the door, but did not move him out. The wind outside was a little strong. Zhang Tan did not know if this guy could be exposed to the wind now, so he left him behind the door to be safe. He checked the sheriff's condition again. His breathing was not strong, but it was not bad either. He had just made a slight sound, but he was still not very awake. He still had to hurry and send him to the pet center for treatment. After Zhang Tan came out of the door, he ran to the building of the Institute of Biological Sciences. At this time, Jiao Wei was in class, Jiao Ma was at work, and Mao was not at home. Recently he had been very active. After thinking about it, the best thing to do was to go to the Institute of Biological Sciences to find a nanny. Exin copied the organized slides into a USB flash drive in Jiao Pa's office. She picked up the printed materials, got up, and was about to go to the conference room. There was a report, and today the dean came to personally host it. As soon as her hand touched the door, Exin heard the sound of the window opening. She turned around and saw the boss's black cat jump in. Before Associate Professor Jiao went abroad, he had a meeting with his graduate students and told them about some unexpected situations at home. Among the graduate students, Exin was the one who knew Zhang Tan's habits the best. Therefore, when Zhang Tan stretched out his paw and pulled his trousers out, Exin felt that something must have happened. When Zhang Tan was carrying the sheriff, there were some bloodstains on his clothes, which scared Exin. For a moment, she forgot to call Jiao Ma and ask for details. Seeing Zhang Tan running out of the window, she quickly put down the things in her hands and rushed out of the building. Zhang Tan, who was waiting outside, soon saw Exin riding a small motorcycle out of the building. Zhang Tan led the way in the front, and Exin followed behind. The old tile-roofed housing area was not too far from the building of the Institute of Biological Sciences. Zhang Tan ran fast and chose a path that was easy for the motorcycle to take. At this time, there were not many people on the main road of the campus, not to mention the remote area near the old tile-roofed housing area. Therefore, Exin rode a little faster. He was also anxious. What if something happened to the 3 members of the Jiao family? But soon, Exin found that the cat was taking him to the old tile-roofed housing area, which he rarely came here. When Zhang Tan pushed the sheriff out of the door, Exin was embarrassed. The sheriff's pants were torn by the cat's claws, and he was absent from the important report hosted by the dean. In the end, it was all because of a cat from an unknown family. When they came out, Exin told the dean that there was an emergency. At that time, the meeting was about to start, so the dean did not ask much. However, after the meeting, the dean would definitely ask in detail. How could he make up a story? He definitely could not tell the truth. He would definitely be criticized. Alas! Anyway, since he was here, he had to save the cat in front of him. Unable to find anything for a while, Exin directly took off her coat. Anyway, the coat was not worth much, and it had not been washed for more than 10 days. She wrapped the sheriff up and put him in the trunk of the motorcycle. It was a little crowded, so she had to make do. Zhang Tan jumped on the motorcycle. This time, he just needed to follow them to the pet center. However, when Exin rode to the school gate, he suddenly found that he did not know which way to go to the pet center. He knew that the best pet hospital nearby was the Ming Ming Pet Center, but he had only heard of it and had never been there. Fortunately, there were more taxis coming and going at the school gate. After Exian parked the motorcycle, she held the cat in her arms and stopped a taxi that had just taken a passenger. She opened the door and got in. Zheng Tin also jumped on the car. "Hey you cat. Master, saving a cat's life is better than building a 7-floor pagoda." The driver was speechless. In the end, the driver's face twitched. He looked at the injured cat in Exian's arms, and then looked at Zheng Tan who was squatting on the seat. He warned Exian that if the cat pooped, peed, or vomited in the back seat, he would have to pay more. Then he started driving. The driver, who often went around this area, was very familiar with the Mingming Pet Center. In addition, the pet center was not too far away, so it didn't take long for them to arrive. The veterinarian who was checking the sheriff's injuries felt strange. Why were there so many scratched cats recently? After making sure that the sheriff's life was not in danger, Zheng Tan listened to the veterinarian's complaints and started to think. Besides the cat in the West Side compound and the sheriff, were there other cats that were attacked? The sheriff stayed at the pet center for treatment. At noon, Exian called Jiaoma and briefly told her what had happened. Jiaoma immediately rushed to the pet center. In order to thank Exian, Jiaoma specifically called the dean of the Institute of Biological Sciences and said that she had something to do here. Exian came to help and was absent from the meeting. After Exian left, Zheng Tan did not have to worry about the rest of the situation. Jiaoma notified the sheriff's owner and also called Jiao Wei, telling them not to ask Zheng Tan for lunch. The sheriff's injuries would be monitored in the pet center for another 2 days. After Zheng Tan was sent back to Tsinghua University by Jiaoma, he came to the old tiled housing area again. Previously, he was in a hurry to find the sheriff and did not pay attention to other details. Now that he was not in a hurry, Zheng Tan decided to look for the sheriff carefully. Since the sheriff chose to hide here instead of running directly to the east side compound, the place where the fight happened must be closer to here. When the cat thief left that day, it met the sheriff and the cat in the west side compound. There were so many cats in the school, so it was definitely not just the sheriff and the cat in the west side compound that wandered outside last night. Why were they the only ones who were seriously injured? The most likely reason was that the cat thief wanted to avenge its paw. Unfortunately, Zheng Tan did not come out himself, so the sheriff and the cat in the west side compound had both bumped into the muzzle. The rain last night was too much of a coincidence. Perhaps the enemy had stopped chasing after the sheriff because of the rain. Otherwise, judging from the injuries on the sheriff's body, he wouldn't have let the sheriff go so easily. After all, compared to the cat in the West District, the sheriff's injuries were slightly lighter. Finally, Zheng Tan found some traces of a cat fight in a small forest at the edge of the old tile-roofed housing area. Not only that, when Zheng Tan came over, he saw the white body and black tail cat named Longan sniffing around in the forest, as if it was trying to identify something. After seeing Zheng Tan, it quickly left. Walnut had said that Wu was warned not to appear in Tsinghua University, but his cat was not warned. This cat might have been sent by Wu, so it should not have participated in the incident last night. Regardless of whether Wu's cat would fight with the cat thief, Zheng Tan could not take this lying down. Although the Jiaopa said that he should keep a low profile, it did not mean that he had to endure it all the time. It was his own territory, so he had to vent his anger personally. Since they did not manage to stop him last night, those cats would definitely come again. Since they were here, they could not leave. Zheng Tan stood up and sharpened his claws on the thick tree trunk, scratching off a few pieces of bark. Chapter 188. Jiaoma hadn't been in a good mood for the past few days, but she didn't have to worry about her 2 children. They went to school from Monday to Friday and rested at home on weekends. At most, Jiao Yuan was a little naughty, but that was okay. What worried Jiaoma the most was her cat. She couldn't even keep it locked up. Jiaoma was on tenterhooks every night, afraid that her cat would be the 3rd cat to be seriously scratched and bitten. She couldn't even concentrate when she watched TV at night. After 9 o'clock, she would look at the wall clock in the living room every few minutes until Zheng Tan came back. Ever since the 2 cats in the 2 residential areas got into trouble, everyone took good care of their own cats. Some teachers even suggested to the school security office to clean up the stray cats in the school. When Xiaogua heard about it, he also asked the people from the Green Wings Association to come over and take a few stray cats to the rescue station. After a series of things, the conclusion was that the school was quite normal. There was nothing unusual. The people from the association set up a few cat cages and caught cats. Except for the 2 stray cats that didn't seem to be a threat and were abandoned by the students, the rest of the cats were claimed by the people living nearby. After all, cats with cat tags were a minority in the school. There were also many people who felt that there was nothing to say about this. After all, it was just a matter of cats. There was no need to make it so complicated and go through so much trouble. As long as they took good care of their own cats, everything would be fine. So in less than a week, the school was peaceful again. Sheriff was brought home after 2 days at the pet center. The day before yesterday, when Zheng Tan went for a walk in their building, he saw him lying on the balcony with an Elizabeth collar around his neck. It wasn't because he was castrated, but probably because he was afraid that he would lick the wounds on his body. Fortunately, Sheriff couldn't understand the complicated words people were saying. Otherwise, he would have been depressed. When the neighbors saw Sheriff like that, they asked his owner, "Ah, your cat finally did it?" The Sheriff's owner only chuckled twice. In short, the news of Sheriff's castration had been spread by the aunties in the courtyard. However, the Sheriff seemed to be in good spirits. He could run and jump now, and his recovery ability was very strong. In about a week, he would be able to get rid of the collar. Recently, this guy was not used to wearing the collar and was rebelling at home. His owner was also very helpless. Huang was locked up at home, and even De Peng was often watched by his grandmother. The only one in the courtyard who was out was Zheng Tan. Zheng Tan wasn't wandering around aimlessly. His intuition told him that the cats hadn't taught him a lesson yet. They hadn't achieved their goal, so they would definitely appear again. During this period of time, whether it was day or night, he had been wandering around conspicuously. Unfortunately, there weren't any results. It was probably because there were too many people watching the cats in the school over the past few days. Moreover, the cats must have been injured when they fought with the sheriff and the others. They were probably resting during this period of time. Awu's cat hadn't appeared on campus during this period of time. Walnut, on the other hand, had come once. He had been called over by Air Mao. Visiting Air Mao was secondary. The main thing was that after hearing from Air Mao about the 2 cats' injuries, Walnut had become suspicious. Zheng Tan had also stayed at Air Mao's place that day, listening to Walnut talk about some things related to the case. In the new photos, there was the yellow cat, which was the one that Zheng Tan had met when he was filming the advertisement outside. Unfortunately, there were so many cats in Chuhua City, and yellow cats were a common sight. There were several inside Chuhua University, and they all looked similar. Where could people start looking for them? Moreover, until now, they hadn't really taken any photos that were more special. The cat trainer was probably on guard. Therefore, after receiving a call from Air Mao, Walnut took the time to come over personally to understand the situation. Zheng Tan squatted next to them, listening to them discuss the case. According to what Walnut had learned from Wu, if a cat trainer really had a goal in mind, other than some regular training programs, he or she would need to be in close range to command the cat trainer at all times. Zheng Tan didn't know how to command specifically, but he could speculate that stealing purses was a regular training program. Therefore, when the cats were stealing purses, the cat trainer might not have been very close to them. However, when the sheriff and the cat in the West Side compound were being beaten, the cat trainer should have been watching from nearby. It wouldn't be too close, as cats would jump around when fighting, but it should be within 100 meters, right? If he really met the cat trainer, Zheng Tan decided to greet him. On this day, Zheng Tan swaggered to the school square. During the day, there were many students around the square. Next to the square, there was a cultural corridor. Students and some people who came out for a walk liked to sit there and rest or read books. What made Zheng Tan stop was a long-haired cat there. The cat was slightly bigger than an ordinary house cat. It was tabby-colored and looked like it had some forest cat lineage. However, this kind of cat wasn't very rare. In Xiaogua's store, there was a tabby-colored Norway forest cat. At first glance, it didn't look very different from this cat. At this moment, the cat was in the cultural corridor. Most students were very nice to the cats on campus. A student gave the cat bread in his hand to eat. However, the cat waited for the students to put down the bread, then stretched out its paw to stick it on. The cat bent its paw to pick up the bread and slowly took 2 bites. It was also indifferent to the people around it. It wasn't afraid and it wasn't close. Maybe the students didn't feel it, so they stayed next to the cat and changed the way they fed it. They didn't know that the cat didn't care about their good intentions at all. When it was in a good mood, it ate the food in front of it, and when it was in a bad mood, it just left it there. Zhengtan hadn't seen the cat in school before. It was already an adult cat. The people in the school usually raised cats when they were kittens. This cat was very likely to be an outsider. Maybe it noticed Zhengtan's gaze. The cat, who was bending its paw to eat the bread, looked at Zhengtan with cold eyes. After a few seconds, it lowered its head and continued to eat the bread nailed to its paw. However, Zhengtan knew that the cat must be wary of him. Just now, Zhengtan could feel the unfriendly message from the cat. If it hadn't been for that look, Zhengtan would have only been a little suspicious. However, after that look, Zhengtan was 80% sure that there was something wrong with the cat. That look didn't look like the look of a cat raised as a pet, but it didn't look like a stray or wild cat either. Although it stared at Zhengtan for a very short time, it made Zhengtan feel like he was being treated as prey. However, who was the real prey? It was still uncertain. Zhengtan looked over there for a while, then lifted his feet and left in another direction. When he turned the corner, Zhengtan suddenly turned his head and saw that the cat was staring at him. The indifferent look in its eyes was even more obvious than before. It was completely different from the one in Xiaoguo's shop. Zhengtan raised his chin provocatively in that direction, hooked his tail, and then walked away with his head held high and his chest out. Not long after Zhengtan left, the cat threw away the piece of ham that it had just nailed to its paw. It turned around and left, ignoring the fawning students. A boy was about to reach out and stop it, but the cat scratched him with its paw, leaving a long bloody mark on his hand. Blood immediately dripped down. Before the boy could angrily kick it, the cat ran away and disappeared from the sight of the students. Jiao family. During dinner, Jiaoma found that her cat ate a little too much. Was it tired from walking around and using up too much energy? Although Jiaoma often complained that her family spoiled the cat too much, she still did the same when it was her turn. After she gave Zhengtan some rice, she scooped 2 big pieces of meat from the soup bowl and put them in Zhengtan's bowl. It's good to eat more. When you're full, stay at home and sleep. You'll gain weight. Don't always run around outside. Jiaoma thought it was a good idea, but when she saw the news at night, Zhengtan opened the door and ran out again. Jiaoma was so angry that she almost threw the remote control in her hand. Coming out of the building, Zhengtan hid the necklace on Depeng's balcony. Depeng was lying on the door leading to the balcony. When it saw Zhengtan, it raised its head and moved its ears, but it didn't intend to get up. After Zhengtan left, it rested its chin on its paw and closed its eyes. Only its ears moved slightly, paying attention to the surroundings. Zhengtan ate so much at night because he wanted to fight at night. He had a feeling that the cat he saw in the school square today would definitely come to find him. He didn't know what would happen, so it was better to store as much energy as possible. Zhengtan walked along a small path in the area where the sheriff and the others were often active. There were fewer street lights here, and only sporadic light could be seen through the leaves. The moonlight was blocked by clouds, and the night breeze seemed to carry something different than usual. Zhengtan's nerves were a little tense. After 2 years of experience, Zhengtan's intuition had sharpened. Although he didn't really smell anything, he felt that he was being watched. He looked around, and all he could see were trees and bushes. Behind him was the narrow path, and there was no one. Some faint music coming from the square made it seem even quieter. Zhengtan slowed down his pace and perked up his ears to pay attention to the surroundings. Suddenly, a soft sound came from the bushes in front of him, followed by a few bird calls and the sound of flapping wings. It was similar to the situation when the cat traffickers came out of the cages. The tip of his tail moved and Zhengtan looked in that direction for a while. He lifted his feet and walked in that direction. There was a trap there, but he couldn't lure those fellows out even if he didn't go. The sound of flapping wings was getting closer and closer, But Zheng Tan stopped when he was about 10 meters away. He didn't continue forward. The flapping sound came from behind the bushes planted at the edge of the forest. Zheng Tan turned a deaf ear to it, but he was alert to the movements around him. However, other than the sound of flapping wings, the forest was very quiet. If there was someone moving in the forest, it would definitely make a sound when it rubbed against the dense ryegrass. There was only the sound of leaves, but Zheng Tan felt that he was being watched more and more. There was also a sense of danger. When the soft sound came from above, Zheng Tan turned around and ran back. The cat was in the tree. Generally, when cats came down from a high tree, they would be a little timid. They wouldn't be as agile as when they climbed up, so Zheng Tan didn't think that the cat was likely to stay in the tree. However, this cat came down from the tree very quickly, almost in the blink of an eye. Although he didn't see the cat that jumped down from the tree, Zheng Tan was sure that it was the cat he saw in the square today. When Xiaoguo was filming an advertisement, he praised the Norwegian forest cat in the shop. He also said that this kind of cat was almost the only kind of cat that was fearless when it swooped down from the ground from a high place. Unfortunately, the cat in the shop was raised as a pet, so Zheng Tan didn't see how brave the cat was. Now he deeply felt the sense of oppression brought by this kind of behavior. Regardless of whether other cats were like this or not, at least the one that Zheng Tan was facing now was fierce enough. Even if it was just a normal cat, not a special cat like the Monseigneur, Zheng Tan didn't dare to underestimate it. Zheng Tan ran fast and didn't get directly pounced on by the cat. The reason why he ran was to find a place where he felt safe. Who knew if there were other traps in the forest in front of him? Zheng Tan didn't want to be a fool and fall into it. He would only be at a disadvantage if he did. There was a forest not far from here, and Zheng Tan was very familiar with it. She had walked by it when she went back for dinner this afternoon. At that time, she did not feel any danger. Presumably, no one had set a trap there, so it was best to solve the problem in a place she was familiar with. It was safer than here. The right time, the right place, and the right people. The right place couldn't be ignored. The cat ran very fast, but Zheng Tan was faster. After running into the familiar forest, Zheng Tan directly climbed up the trees and shuttled between the trees. In terms of this skill, Zheng Tan was still very confident that he could beat the cat behind him. Moreover, only one had appeared. What about the others? The cat was probably a little tired from chasing Zheng Tan. It couldn't do anything to him. After it stopped, it opened its mouth and meowed a few times. This kind of cat's meowing was different from ordinary cats. Xiaoguo said that their meowing sounded like singing, but Zheng Tan didn't think it sounded like singing at all. Now he didn't think it sounded like singing at all. It should be calling for its companions, right? Just right. If all of them appeared, he could solve it together. Just now, Zheng Tan noticed that there were other people around who were paying attention to this place. The cat trainer didn't appear. However, just as this cat stopped meowing, another cat meow came from another direction. The cat under the tree that was preparing to climb the tree paused. Zheng Tan looked at the cat, and suddenly seemed to be on high alert. Speaking of which, the meow that came from the distance just now sounded familiar to Zheng Tan, but he couldn't figure it out at the moment. He didn't have much time to think about who it was. At this time, East Side Compound, first floor of Block B, Depeng's house. The old lady was wearing reading glasses and reading a book about Koan opera. Suddenly, she thought of something and shouted, "Depeng, bring the slippers on the balcony in." The weather was getting hotter, and the winter slippers were no longer used. The old lady washed the slippers and put them outside to dry. Today, she forgot to put them away. Usually, the old lady often asked Depeng to help bring things on the balcony. Depeng could still understand a few words that he often heard. After waiting for a while and hearing no movement, the old lady looked up at the balcony. Depeng. Chapter 189. Zheng Tan stayed in the tree. The cat below and the cat in the distance with a familiar voice were both calling out, as if they were calling for their companions. Zheng Tan wanted to howl, but he knew that if he howled loudly, the east side courtyard would probably make a scene, so he held it back. He didn't want to provoke the east side courtyard. There were a lot of people there who liked to stir up trouble. If they stirred up trouble, there would be no peace at night. There were soft whooshing sounds around. Zheng Tan looked around and saw that there were about 4 more cats. Looking at the way these 4 cats were running, they didn't seem to be injured. Maybe they weren't the same batch from a few days ago. The cat trainer he had never met might have had more than 2 or 3 cats. Although they weren't the same batch from last time, Zheng Tan was still holding a grudge against them. 1 against 5? No, Zheng Tan still chose to attack them one by one. These cats were all trained. If it were an adult, he would have been scratched a few times. They weren't the softened leopard cat. Cat claws didn't have eyes, and Zheng Tan didn't want to be scratched. The process wasn't important, as long as the result was the same. Zheng Tan chose the biggest cat as his first target, which was the one that had chased after him and roared. It gave Zheng Tan the feeling that it was the most dangerous. As for the other 4, he let them follow behind. After summoning its companion, the cat seemed to have become even more ferocious. It climbed up the tree and charged at Zheng Tan. It even bared its fangs at Zheng Tan and growled threateningly. In this originally quiet forest, it seemed to have a strong psychological and imposing pressure. However, Zheng Tan wasn't a real cat, and cats weren't monkeys. Fighting in trees was still very limited. Relatively speaking, Zheng Tan had a lot more advantages than it. Obviously, this cat wasn't used to Zheng Tan's running style of jumping between trees. Although it didn't hesitate as long as the other cats, it didn't have much experience and didn't land accurately. Zheng Tan took advantage of this and found an opportunity to kick it. As expected, the cat was kicked down. There were more branches below. The cat hooked onto a branch as a cushion before landing in the grass on the ground. After being kicked by Zheng Tan, it was not bad to have such a reaction. Before it could even stand firm on the ground, Zheng Tan had already jumped down from the tree and swiped at it with his claws. Then it scratched off a claw. Therefore, a creature with thick and long hair like this was like wearing soft armor. It could always reduce the opponent's attack power by a lot. Because of this, Zheng Tan couldn't scratch this cat like he did to the leopard cat. Since claws couldn't solve the problem well, he would just use his fists. Although he didn't use his full strength, Zheng Tan still held back a little in order to prevent his secrets from being exposed. Even so, 2 slaps and 1 kick were quite a blow to the cat that had just fallen from the tree. Zheng Tan saw that the cat's leg seemed to be injured. It was either sprained or fractured. Generally, when one suffered such injuries, one shouldn't move at will, especially when it was fractured. However, this guy still looked so fierce. It opened its mouth and growled. Its ears pressed back, and its body expanded when it first stood up. It seemed more intimidating. Unfortunately, it was useless against Zheng Tan, but it couldn't be underestimated. When Zheng Tan went up to beat it, if he didn't dodge quickly, he would have been scratched by this guy. A piece of bark on the trunk of the tree next to him was hooked off. Zheng Tan was about to continue to slap the long-haired cat in front of him to shut it up when suddenly his ears moved. He retreated to the side of a thick tree. If the situation wasn't right, he would jump up the tree first. When Zheng Tan saw the 3 figures that jumped out, he was relieved. It was Awu's 3 cats. Zheng Tan also remembered that the roar in the distance just now was more like the cry of the white-body black-tail cat called Longan. A cat jumped down from a tree behind Zheng Tan and pounced at her. Just as Zheng Tan was about to turn around and slap it, a figure jumped out from the bushes. With an agility that did not match its size, it jumped up and pinned the cat behind Zheng Tan to the ground. The cat screamed, "Oh!" under the weight. Depang, this guy, usually looked lazy and kind, but when he was fierce he was definitely stronger than the sheriff. Zheng Tan always knew this. But he didn't expect Depang to come here at this time. The old lady must have told him not to run around. If the old lady found out that this fatty ran out, he didn't know how anxious she would be. After this incident, Depang would probably be punished to squat on instant noodles when he went back. Depang ran here probably because he heard Longan's roar, but Zheng Tan was still very touched that he could come over. It could be seen that Depang wasn't in the camp of Longan and the other 2 cats. The cooperation between the 3 cats was too good. Depang didn't have the intention to join them. The reason he came over was most likely to help Zheng Tan. As expected of the cat brothers. How loyal. Although Awu wasn't nearby, looking at the cooperation between Longan and the other 2 cats, it was obvious that this wasn't the first time they encountered this kind of thing. Just like the basic skills of the cat thieves to steal their own wallets, Longin and the other two cats were also very skilled in fighting together. Longin was calm and could always choose the best time. Lotus Seed's attack power wasn't high, but it was agile. And the long-haired cat Babeo was resistant to scratches. This guy's temperament was a bit like the sheriff's. It belonged to the type that became fiercer the more it fought. With the other two beside it, it wouldn't be too arbitrary. Seeing this scene, Zheng Tan could only say that this was indeed trained by Ah Wu. It wasn't as lazy as the sheriff and the other cats when they usually fought. When cats PK with cats, not only would they run around, but they would also make low growls or other sounds. Zheng Tan didn't use this method, so it was still considered quiet earlier. But when there were more cats, the quiet little forest became lively. This place wasn't too far from the eastern courtyard. If it was during the day, the people in the eastern courtyard might not have noticed the movements in the forest. But now it was nighttime, and this area was very quiet at night. When the cats on both sides fought, they made different sounds. In addition, Babeo was probably too excited to fight just now, so it roared loudly, causing the other cats to roar as well. There was also the cat that was beaten down by Zheng Tan, and couldn't get up to walk. Although it didn't continue to roar like this, the cats in the courtyard heard it. In the eastern courtyard, Air Mao was taking a bath when it suddenly heard Black Rice's loud roar. It didn't even wipe off the water on its body and directly came out naked. It was the only one at home anyway, so it wasn't afraid of being seen. When Air Mao came out, it saw Black Rice standing on the balcony railing and shouting in a direction. It was so scared that it quickly ran to the balcony and carried Black Rice indoors. Luckily it was late at night, so no one was paying attention. Otherwise, they would definitely notice that there was a naked man here. When Black Rice was screaming, the sheriff and Huang were both at home, yelling and scratching at the door. Unfortunately, they were watched tightly and couldn't go out. Suddenly, the eastern courtyard was noisy again. The cats were meowing, and the dogs were barking at the top of their lungs. Every time this happened in the courtyard, it was either a thief or a cat trafficker. So when the security uncle heard the commotion this time, he notified the school security office. The most anxious ones were Jiao Ma and Depang's old lady. The neighbors couldn't persuade them to stop. Before the security office people came, they went out with flashlights to look for the cats. Air Mao put Black Rice in the pet bag, carried the bag, and went out with Jiao Ma and the others. Chu Xiangyang, who lived next door to the Jiao family, helped to look after the children again. Other than that, the fourth floor of Block B was also noisy. "Let me out! Let me out!" Jiang Jun's toes clanged on the iron fence. "You're blind when you go out at night," Professor Tan, who had just been woken up, said angrily. Generally speaking, most birds had poor eyesight at night and didn't make much noise, so it was easy to get lost outside. Parrots were the same. At night, they would quietly hide. Because of this, many parrots liked to crawl under people's blankets. Jiang Jun used to crawl under people's blankets, but ever since he pooped in his blankets, Professor Tan threw him out to sleep in a cage. Jiang Jun was a special case among parrots. Sometimes, when he was in a good mood, he didn't sleep at night. Although he didn't make loud noises, he would still sing a little to entertain himself. Because he didn't disturb people, his owner, Professor Tan, let him be. Hearing Professor Tan's scolding, Jiang Jun paused for a moment, then continued to step on the iron fence. He stomped even louder and shouted like he was singing, "Let me out! Go to sleep!" At the same time, Zheng Tan's situation was very good. Although Zheng Tan could deal with these cats by himself, since he had a helper, Zheng Tan could spare some time to find the cat trainer earlier. Another reason why Zheng Tan chose this small forest was that the terrain and the layout of the forest made it convenient for him to find the cat trainer behind the scenes. At this time, the cat trainer was hiding behind a statue and observing with night vision goggles. He wasn't having a good time recently. The police were watching him closely, and there was another cat trainer, Wu, waiting behind him. It wasn't easy to hear that Wu wasn't allowed to get close to Tsinghua University, so he chose to attack Tsinghua University. He didn't expect to fail here. Last time he didn't send out Boss, and was seriously injured. This time he decided to take revenge and replaced a group of healthy cats with Boss leading the team. But he didn't expect that in a university, There were so many cats that were good at fighting. Shouldn't the cats in this kind of campus be more docile? But the fact was, last time, the 4 cats that he had trained could only be said to have won a Pyrrhic victory against the 2 cats. This time, the boss was defeated at the beginning, and the cats that came later weren't gentle characters. Plus, Wu's 3 cats were here. The cat trainer's mind was full of twists and turns, but before he could figure out the reason, he realized that the cat that had easily beaten the boss he had trained with great difficulty was actually running straight towards him. What the F***ck? The cat trainer didn't care about the cats in the forest anymore. He turned around and ran. His own cat in the forest was being beaten up, so it couldn't spare time to help him. Plus, he had trained cats for many years, so of course he could tell which cats were easy to mess with and which weren't. Against this cat, it was better to run first. While Zheng Tan was chasing the cat trainer, Air Mao took the old lady and Jiao Ma to the small forest according to Black Rice's reaction. De Peng heard the old lady call his name, and bit the cat that was being pressed down by him again. Then it ran out of the forest and jumped into the old lady's arms. The old lady's hands trembled as she asked Air Mao to use the flashlight to check on her cat's condition. De Peng's mouth was still stuck with cat fur from an unknown cat. Anyway, judging from the color, it didn't belong to De Peng. The light wasn't good, so the small injuries weren't easy to see, but she didn't see any major injuries. The old lady was relieved. Chapter 190. Zheng Tan actually heard the shouts of the Jiao Ma and the others, but he didn't stop. It wasn't easy to catch this cat trainer, and he couldn't let all his efforts go to waste. Although the cat trainer looked a little embarrassed and was surprised by Zheng Tan's sudden pursuit, Zheng Tan could tell from the cat trainer's escape route that this guy was fully prepared and had a good understanding of the layout of the surrounding area. He wasn't just running around with his head in a mess. This guy ran very fast and didn't look very strong. Zheng Tan didn't expect him to run so fast and react so quickly. Almost as soon as Zheng Tan rushed over, the guy turned around and slipped away, jumping over railings and some obstacles with ease. Zheng Tan chased after him, but he didn't let down his guard. The guy's running route wasn't the main road of the campus, and there were no cameras installed in these places. No wonder the people in the school security office didn't find any clues from the surveillance cameras. The cat trainer glanced back when he jumped over a fence. With the help of a nearby street lamp, he saw the black shadow that was chasing after him. He cursed in his heart. Although he wasn't caught, the cat kept chasing after him. In all his years of cat training, he had never seen a cat with such strong endurance. F***ck. Fortunately, he was prepared. The cat trainer looked at a small forest in front of him, and made a few strange sounds from his mouth. The sounds weren't loud and sounded like some kind of insect chirping. Zheng Tan could hear it clearly, and he had heard this sound in the forest before. It was just that at that time, the sounds of the cats were mixed together and Zheng Tan didn't pay special attention to it. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 4 figures rushed out of the forest. This was the cat trainer's backup plan. To be on the safe side, in addition to the few cats that were fighting in the forest, he had brought 2 healthy cats and 2 cats that weren't seriously injured last time. They had stayed here to ambush, and now they had become the cat trainer's helpers for his escape. Zheng Tan wasn't afraid of the uninjured boss, let alone these cats. But now, Zheng Tan's main target was the cat trainer, so he didn't care about these cats for the time being. When the 4 figures rushed over from the front, Zheng Tan jumped over the cat in front and knocked away the second one that was blocking the way. As for the 2 behind, Zheng Tan had already left them behind. When the cat trainer looked behind him to see how the interception was going, he happened to see Zheng Tan forcefully knocking away the cat that was blocking the way. He almost spat out blood. Was this really a F***king cat and not a combat dog? Which cat would use such a violent method in such a situation? Originally, the cat trainer just hoped that his cat could delay Zheng Tan for a while so that he had a chance to get rid of the chase, but he didn't expect that it didn't have any effect at all. At the thought of this fierce cat, the cat trainer endured the discomfort and continued to run. However, this cat trainer wasn't familiar with the surroundings, and he didn't have the good night vision of a cat. When he was crossing a lawn, he tripped over a raised area. He didn't sprain his ankle, but after a few seconds, when he was ready to speed up again, a strong force suddenly hit him from behind. He fell directly to the ground, his chin hitting the ground. Although it was grass, it wasn't a good feeling, and his head was a little dizzy. The cat trainer shook his head, got up, and reached into his pants to take out the stun baton. Before he could find the target, he was kicked in the back and fell forward again. However, because he had changed direction when he got up to find the target, this time he fell and hit the landscape stone next to him. Hitting a stone wasn't like hitting the grass, not to mention hitting the landscape stone. His head, which was already a little dizzy, suddenly became more dizzy. Blood flowed from his forehead and nose, and the stun baton fell to the ground. Although his head was dizzy and his thoughts weren't very clear, with the instinct of a cat trainer, he still made some urgent insect-like sounds, calling his cat to come over and help. Zheng Tan kicked the stun baton that fell on the grass into the artificial lake not far away. He went up and clawed at the cat trainer, leaving a claw mark on his face. The cat trainer screamed and staggered to stand up. His head was dizzy, and he couldn't run as nimbly as before. He didn't even have time to think about why he was kicked down. It was only a cat chasing him. Did a cat have this kind of strength? This question would only be asked when his head was clear. Zheng Tan watched him stand up, jump up and kick him again. He watched the man fall to the ground for the third time. Probably because he was tired and dizzy, the man didn't intend to stand up again. He pulled up the hood of his clothes to cover his head, and curled up with his face facing the ground to prevent Zheng Tan from scratching his face. Zheng Tan looked at the guy in front of him who was pretending to be a turtle. He didn't immediately rush up. After seeing the stun baton, he suspected that this guy still had some equipment hidden on his body. To be safe, Zheng Tan didn't intend to fight in close combat. But if this guy thought that he couldn't do anything to him if he didn't get close, then he was very wrong. Zheng Tan looked around. Some time ago, the lawn areas in the school were paved with bricks. The roads in the lawn that the students walked on were all paved with square lawn bricks. And there were some broken and abandoned lawn bricks in the bushes next to them that hadn't been cleaned up. Zheng Tan walked over, picked up a piece, and threw it at the person who was pretending to be a turtle. There were no other people around, no cameras, and no one saw at night. Zheng Tan stood upright on his two hind legs, and then used his two front paws to hold the lawn bricks and throw them at the person. A cat came over and attacked Zheng Tan, but Zheng Tan whipped it to the side. Then Zheng Tan continued to hold the brick and throw it at the person. At first, the person was screaming in pain, but later he stopped screaming. He probably couldn't take it anymore. When he got up, he waved his hand, and a thin whip was swung around in a circle. Zhang Ziyan didn't know if this whip was used to train cats. The strength of the whip was good, and his movements looked very experienced. Unfortunately, Zheng Tan was outside the whip's attack range. Zheng Tan was now very glad that he didn't attack at close range. Otherwise, he would have most likely been hit by the whip. After the person swung the whip around a few times, he found that he didn't hit the target. Instead, he was a little unsteady. He planned to walk to the side of a tree to lean on, but suddenly he felt a pain on his face. He had just woken up a little, but now he felt confused again. After throwing the brick, Zheng Tan saw that the person fell to the ground again. He wondered if he should go over and take a look, and then scratch a few times to help the sheriff and the others take revenge. Then, he heard the sound of someone running over. It was Air Mao. There weren't many street lights here, and only a vague shadow could be seen. Air Mao turned on the flashlight and looked over. He saw a half-dead person on the ground, and the black cat that Jiao Ma was anxiously looking for was squatting on a landscape stone. It looked very calm. Black Coal, hurry up and go back. Your cat mom is anxiously looking for you. Leave this to me, Air Mao said to Zheng Tan. Seeing Air Mao, Zheng Tan didn't want to continue arguing with this cat trainer. Before he left, he had stepped on the cat trainer's body. Jiao Ma, who had finally seen her cat, was finally relieved. But after the worry, she was angry. Jiao Ma was very angry, and the consequences were very serious. She asked Zheng Tan to take out the house key. Zheng Tan pretended not to know. After all, he had hidden the key well. As long as De Pang didn't betray him, Jiao Ma wouldn't be able to find it. The noisy East Side compound returned to peace soon after the arrival of the police. Zheng Tan didn't know what happened to Wu and his 3 cats, but from the news he heard from Air Mao the next day, Zheng Tan learned that the cat trainer had been personally taken away by Walnut. He had also taken away a few cats, including the boss, that had been beaten up by Zheng Tan. Awu's cat had been taken away by himself. Walnut and Air Mao didn't plan to publicize the fact that they were cat trainers. Otherwise, not only the cats in the school, but also all the cats in Chuhua City would be hated by people, especially those who had their wallets stolen. It didn't matter if they had been stolen by a cat or not, they would all vent their anger on the cat. There would also be people who were hostile to cats who would pour all kinds of dirty water on the cat. Walnut and Air Mao didn't want people to think of a thief when they first saw a cat. Also, the cat-friendly event hadn't been held for long. Now that it was exposed, it would be a slap in the face. It was better to keep it a secret. They had also discussed with the school's higher-ups. They wouldn't make the incident public. They would just say that they had caught a thief in the middle of the night. It was true that they had caught a thief, so it wasn't considered hiding the truth. They didn't go against their conscience. Zheng Tan stayed at home. He didn't go out that day, and he wouldn't go out for the next few days. At most, he would wander around the building, at least for the time being. Zheng Tan didn't hand over the door key, so he consciously stayed at home to reflect on his mistakes. When Jiao Ma calmed down one day, Zheng Tan would go out for a walk. When he was sunbathing on the balcony, Zheng Tan saw a familiar car parked in the compound. It belonged to Depeng's cat father. It seemed that Depeng should be at home eating instant noodles. The old lady couldn't bear it, so only the cat father came to supervise. Zheng Tan thought about it. What would happen if Jiao Pa was at home? In the end, he couldn't think of the most likely scenario. Jiao Pa was too unpredictable. He couldn't be compared to ordinary people. What angered Zheng Tan the most was that little Pomelo wouldn't let him sleep on the bed. For the past 2 days, Zheng Tan had been sleeping on the cat tree. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Zheng Tan fished out a small piece of soil from the flower pot next to him, and threw it towards the 4th floor. It hit the iron net. General, who was listless and thinking about something, heard the noise. It immediately flapped its wings and ran over, looking left and right. Zheng Tan wasn't in the mood to pay attention to the bird. After rolling around on the balcony, he decided to go online and read some gossip. This time, Zheng Tan didn't go to the pet forum. Instead, he went to Chuhua University's forum. The most popular posts were all about the incident. The cat was gone, and so was the cat trainer, but people's discussion didn't stop. In fact, it was getting weirder and weirder. The aunties in the East Courtyard had exaggerated the story and spread it out, saying that the cats and dogs in the courtyard had helped to catch the thief this time. With the previous experience, this time the story was even more exaggerated. However, most people outside the courtyard only took it as a joke and did not take it seriously. In contrast, the students' discussion this time was unusually popular. That night, the cats in the forest fought and ran in a wider area. When they got close to the student dormitory in a certain district, some students who didn't sleep at night heard the scary cat calls. These calls lasted for a long time, and it sounded like the temperature had dropped a few degrees. The next day, they heard the news that the school caught a thief, so they started to talk about it. Zheng Tan couldn't help but complain. These students thought too much. They even came up with demons and ghosts. Chapter 191. For Zheng Tan, the days of facing the wall at home could be summed up in one word: boring. 2 days ago, he could go online to pass the time and watch the commercials he had filmed. Other than that, he could only sleep at home. Celestine came once, but in order to avoid being scolded by Jiao Ma, Celestine only went to Air Mao's place on the 3rd floor. Zheng Tan went to listen to them talk about the follow-up of the incident. The cat trainer was sentenced. Celestine didn't say the details, but Zheng Tan learned that the cat that had been beaten up by him was taken away by Awu. It was said that the cat was very fierce and aggressive. Especially after it was beaten up by Zheng Tan, its temper became worse. Some people even suggested to Walnut that it should be euthanized directly, as it was too dangerous to let such a cat out. Later, Awu said that as a reward for this incident, and also to solve the problem of Boss, Walnut was happy to give the cat to Awu. When the news that Awu was not allowed to get close to Chuhua University was released by Walnut himself, in order to lure the snake out of its hole. Obviously, his goal was achieved. No wonder Zheng Tan could see Gui Yuan at school during that time. After the incident subsided, no one knew where the person and the cat went. In general, Zheng Tan spent most of his time at home. For Zheng Tan, who liked to walk outside, it was very uncomfortable to hold it in. Every day, he lay on the balcony and looked outside sadly. Finally, one day a week later, after breakfast, when Jiao Ma took Jiao Yuan and little Pomelo out, Zheng Tan tried to follow behind them. As he walked, he looked at Jiao Ma's face. Little Pomelo glanced at Zheng Tan, pursed her lips and didn't say anything. Jiao Yuan grinned and snickered. Zheng Tan followed them all the way to the door on the first floor. When the three of them went out, Jiao Ma didn't say anything, so he shamelessly rushed out before the door closed. He then looked at Jiao Ma's expression. She did not look happy, but more than that, she looked helpless. Don't cause trouble and don't meddle in other people's business. If you encounter a thief in the future, don't rush up on your own. Catching thieves is the job of the police and dogs. Why would a cat like you rush up on your own? Jiao Ma was indeed frightened that night. Otherwise, she would not have been angry for so long. Although this was a reprimand, at the same time, it also meant that Jiao Ma had temporarily acquiesced to Zheng Tan going out. If it weren't for Jiao Ma watching, Zheng Tan would have jumped up and done a few somersaults in excitement. Somersaults were not difficult for cats. After sending little Pomelo to the affiliated primary school, Zheng Tan watched Mama Jiao and Jiao Yuan leave until they were out of sight. Then he ran to the lawn at the side, jumping up and down. For the past week, he felt like his whole body was going to rust. He had been holding it in for so long, but now that he was running, he felt much better. After flirting with a few gray magpies, Zheng Tan walked along the flower bed. When he arrived at the teacher activity center, he heard a familiar voice. Zheng Tan jumped onto a windowsill and looked inside. He saw the B*TCH bird standing on a towel rack, swaying its head and singing kunku opera with the retired teachers. No wonder this bird's accent was weird, and it always sang opera. It was learning from these old men and women. Depeng's grandmother was also inside. Depeng was squatting next to her. General would occasionally run up to her and flirt with her, but he would be slapped away. Zheng Tan did not understand the opera, and was not interested in it. He didn't go too far in the morning. He walked around the school and decided to go outside in the afternoon. Some people wanted to go further after being locked up for a long time. Zheng Tan belonged to this category. He chose the old street where Jiao Yuan's school was located. The furthest he walked along this road was around Uncle Lame's house. Today, Zheng Tan decided to go further. The pace of the city's construction was speeding up. After not seeing it for a while, Zheng Tan felt that there were some changes. When he arrived at Uncle Lame's old neighborhood, Zheng Tan thought for a moment. He jumped over the wall and came to the front of the building. Swish! At the familiar window, the window was pulled open. An unfamiliar face appeared, and there was some conversation. There were also some potted plants on the balcony, not the cardboard boxes from before. This place must have been sold to someone else. Since he didn't know anyone, Zheng Tan didn't stay any longer. He walked out of the neighborhood and walked forward according to his plan. The further he walked, the more obvious the difference between the old street and the old street. Whether it was the shops or the wall, there was a vitality of the new era. When there was no wall, Zheng Tan walked along the side. Occasionally, people would look at him, but most people were in a hurry and didn't bother to pay attention to a cat that didn't look special. After walking for a while, Zheng Tan saw a bridge in front of him. There were a lot of pedestrians on both sides of the street. There was no path that satisfied Zheng Tan, so Zheng Tan didn't want to go any further. However, he didn't want to turn around and go back immediately, so he decided to walk on the bridge. Ignoring the sounds of cats around him, Zheng Tan walked up the stairs by himself. There were fruit sellers at the corner of the stairs. Some people were bargaining. When he came to the bridge, Zheng Tan looked around. It was quite rich. Other than a few fruit sellers, there were also people selling cakes and small toys. Were there no law enforcement officers here? Standing on the bridge, there was an endless stream of traffic below him. On one side of the bridge, there was a street full of old buildings. Many of the buildings would be marked with the word demolished. On the other side, there was a more colorful and prosperous world. The tall modern buildings showed the atmosphere of a metropolis. Looking away, Zhang Tan looked around the bridge. Finally, his eyes fell on the middle of the bridge. There was an old man with white hair, wearing old grayish-blue clothes, sitting on a simple folding stool. His back was leaning against the railing. Next to him was a cane for the blind. Above his head was a large black umbrella. The handle of the umbrella was open to block the sun. The handle of the umbrella was tied to the railing. The old man was holding an arrow in his arms. Next to his feet was a small wooden box. Inside the box were some coins and small bills. A performer? And a blind one? While Zhang Tan was looking around, the people around him were also looking at the black cat curiously. They had been selling things on the bridge for some time. This was the first time they saw a cat walking up alone. It didn't seem to be afraid of people at all. It was very calm and didn't pay attention to the teasing of passers-by. Originally, some people were just looking at the black cat curiously. Then they started to call out to the passers-by who wanted to buy things. However, when they saw the black cat walking towards the blind old man in the middle, some people couldn't help but stop shouting and pay attention to the old man. Zhang Tan was purely curious. He had heard some things from Mao and the others. For example, there were some popular scammers. Many people pretended to be blind and pitiful to gain sympathy from people. The money they earned in a day was not necessarily less than some office workers. However, this old man didn't beg for money from passers-by. Second, he didn't write on the ground or write on the cushion to make people sympathize with him. Third, Zhang Tan felt that this person was a bit strange, but he couldn't tell what was strange. Was this person really blind? Zhang Tan walked closer and stopped half a meter away from the old man. He squatted and tilted his head to look at the man who was sitting there with his eyes closed as if he had fallen asleep. After waiting for 2 minutes, he found that the old man had no intention of opening his eyes. His eyes fell on the open wooden box at the old man's feet. Zhang Tan got up and walked over. He looked at the coins in the wooden box, then looked at the old man who was leaning against the railing with his eyes closed. Then he looked at the box again. Then he raised his paw and fished around. He bent his paw and hooked a coin up and put it down again. The coin fell and made a ding sound when it touched other coins. When Zhang Tan put the coin in the box, he paid attention to the old man. When the coin made a ding sound, he noticed that the old man's ears moved. Among the people that Zhang Tan had met, there weren't many who could move their ears. It was rare to see someone who could move their ears. Zhang Tan's bad taste after a week of holding back at home came back again. Anyway, as long as he didn't go too far, the people around him would only think that a cat was curious about the coins in the box, but couldn't fish them out. They wouldn't think too much about it. He fished up another coin. Just as he was about to fish it out of the wooden box, he loosened his paw and made another ding sound. The old man's ears moved again. He fished it up again and loosened his paw. Ding. The old man's ears moved again. After repeating it a few times, Zhang Tan became impatient. Why didn't this old man open his eyes? Even if there was something wrong with his eyes and he couldn't open them, could he not speak? Or could it be that this old man couldn't see or speak? Even if he couldn't see or speak, at least he still had his hearing. Looking at the situation just now, this old man's hearing shouldn't be too bad. He didn't react at all when he heard that his money box was being moved. There wasn't even any change in his expression. He was way too calm. Thinking back to when he was performing outside with Third Master Fong, although it was embarrassing, Zhang Tan would definitely beat up anyone who touched the money box. But this old man? He squatted down and thought for a while, the tip of his tail wagging rhythmically. Then, Zhang Tan set his gaze on the half bottle of mineral water next to the folding stool. He walked over, raised his paw, and pushed. This was a bad habit that Zhang Tan had picked up after staying with the sheriff and Huang for a long time. After the half bottle of mineral water fell, it rolled away in the direction away from the old man. The old man could touch the bottle with his hand down, but now it was difficult for him to touch it. After all, he was blind. The people around who saw this scene all had the same thought in their hearts. This cat's character is really King bad. Zhang Tan didn't care about what others thought. Looking at the person who was still sitting there, he cursed in his heart. This person is just a block of wood, right? Other than moving his ears, what else can he do? Boring. After harassing for a long time, there was no response. Zheng Tan rolled back the half bottle of mineral water that had rolled away. Although he didn't make the bottle stand up, he still pushed it in the same place, where the old man could touch it with his hand down. Just as he was about to leave, Zheng Tan noticed that the beard on the old man's chin was quite long. When the wind blew, it swayed on both sides. Thinking that the old man didn't respond for a long time, Zheng Tan's bad taste rose again. He jumped up and stretched out his paw to touch the old man's long beard. Then there was still no response. Zheng Tan felt that if those naughty kids were to grab his beard, he would definitely be angry and flip out. He really didn't know how the old man could tolerate it. If the old man could give some other reaction other than moving his ears, Zheng Tan wouldn't be interested in teasing him. But the old man just couldn't sit still, which made Zheng Tan stubborn, persevering to grab his beard again and again. Not far away, the dark-skinned uncle who was buying mangoes saw this situation and opened his mouth wide, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. He even forgot to reply to the passerby who asked for the price. He sighed in his heart. This cat must be looking for trouble. Zheng Tan was busy making the old man angry, so he didn't notice the change in the faces of the stall owners around him. Chapter 192. Recently, Ajin had reached a bottleneck in his creation, and was in a very bad state. His teammates suggested that he go out for a walk. Maybe he would get some inspiration, but he should not be impatient and should not be too burdened. He should maintain his passion for music. Therefore, when he was not performing, Ajin would walk around Chuhua with his guitar on his back. During this time, Ajin played in the underground passages and some squares. He also slept in the park at night. It was as if he had returned to the time when he was a vagabond singer. His impatient mood gradually calmed down. Today, Ajin had originally planned to sing in the central square. In fact, there were some talented young people performing in many large squares in Chuhua at night. In the past 2 days, Ajin had met many of them in the other 2 places, and he had gained a lot during the exchange. However, Ajin did not expect to meet Zheng Tan here. Ajin was grateful to Zheng Tan, and he also had some awe that he could not explain. Sometimes, Ajin felt that it was incredible that a cat could have such a great impact on him and the band. If there was no black cat, where would he and his teammates go? He did not dare to imagine that he had almost given up at that time. Therefore, Ajin and his teammates had always been grateful to this cat, which could be seen from their black cat team badges. Speaking of awe, perhaps this was the only famous cat that Ajin had ever met. After all, this was a cat that even Yi Hao, the big boss of the night building, dared to show displeasure to him. Ajin did not know where Zheng Tan lived. In fact, he did not even know Zheng Tan's background. He only knew that this cat was very familiar with several big shots, and that every time he went to the night building, he would go with several big shots. Therefore, when he first saw Zheng Tan, Ajin was not sure. However, after looking at him for a while, he matched the famous cat with the black cat in front of him. Perhaps, there was no other cat that dared to bully a blind old man in such a place in such an atmosphere. Black charcoal! Ajin shouted. He was very happy to see Zheng Tan. This was their band's lucky star. Zheng Tan had just plucked a strand of the old man's beard when he saw the old man's face twitch. There was no other reaction. Zheng Tan was about to pluck 2 more strands to see how long the old man could endure when he suddenly heard someone calling his name. Idiot! Why did he call her by her name? Zheng Tan cursed in his heart. When doing bad things, the biggest taboo was to expose one's true identity. Originally, this was Zheng Tan's first time here, and no one knew who Zheng Tan was. Who would be able to find him if he took a stroll and left with his tail wagging? But now, Ajin directly called out his name. Zheng Tan hesitated. Should he pretend that he had been mistaken for someone else? As he was thinking, Zheng Tan looked up at the old man sitting there, and found that the old man had opened his eyes. His eyeballs were turbid gray and white, and he was looking at where Zheng Tan was. Zheng Tan was so scared that he jumped back reflexively. It was not that Zheng Tan was timid, but it was too sudden. The old man had not opened his eyes for so long, but now he suddenly opened them. However, he was really blind. Not only did the old man open his eyes, but he also moved. As soon as the old man moved, Ajin hurried over, afraid that the old man would hit Zheng Tan with his cane. The other people who had set up stalls around were also thinking about how the old man would deal with the cat. Although the old man usually did not talk much, did not communicate with others, and did not argue with anyone, that was because no one provoked him. The current situation was that the cat was courting death. Even Zheng Tan thought that the old man would teach him a lesson. The cat still had a strand of beard in its claws, so he was ready to slip away. Unexpectedly, the old man moved, adjusted his sitting position, and began to play the eru. Zheng Tan had seen the old woman in Jiaopa's hometown play the eru. Now that he heard the old man play it, he felt that he should not be inferior to the old woman. Moreover, the old man was blind. It was too rare. At the same time, Zheng Tan had to admit that the old man had a good temper. He was still in the mood to play the eru, even though he was pulling his beard. Although Ajin did not know much about the eru, he was very sensitive to music. Ajin felt that the old man did not seem to be angry. Instead, he sounded like he was in a good mood. There were many people who played the eru, and most of them had a sad and cold feeling. But now, the eru tune played by the old man made people feel like they were on a sunset dam. Unknowingly, the tension just now had relaxed a lot. Ajin judged the old man's mood by the eru tune, while Zheng Tan felt whether the old man had any malicious intentions through his intuition. Since the old man was not going to pursue the matter, Zheng Tan could not continue to bully the blind man. Moreover, Ajin was here. If he continued to cause trouble, more information would be inadvertently revealed by the idiot Ajin. Since he did not intend to continue to bully the old man, Zheng Tan simply squatted beside him and listened to the old man play the eru. Ajin was not going to leave immediately. He stood beside Zheng Tan and leaned against the railing, listening to the old man play the eru. Ajin could see that the old man was an expert in playing the eru. He was no worse than the teachers in the music academy. Listening to him for a while could also be good for his own composition. Another point was that Ajin had heard a lot of eru music, but he had never heard the song played by the old man. However, he was too embarrassed to interrupt and ask, so he stood quietly by the side and enjoyed it. The people who set up stalls around had long been used to the old man playing the eru. Seeing that there was no fun to watch, they began to busy themselves with their own stalls. For them, a cat was not as attractive as money. Speaking of money, Zheng Tan now understood why the old man had so much money in his wooden box. If one played the eru well, passers-by would be willing to listen to it and like it. In addition, they sympathized with the old man, so they would give some money. Although most of the money was small change, it was enough to earn a lot in a day. For an old man, it was more than enough for his living expenses, and there was still money left to enjoy other things. In fact, there were more people giving money today than usual, and part of it was because of Zheng Tan's cat. This was also the reason why some performers liked to take children or animals with them. When it was almost dark, Zheng Tan got up and was ready to go back to pick up little Pomelo. Black Charcoal, are you ready to go? Ajin was immersed in the tune of the eru. When the sound of the eru stopped, he realized that the black cat, who had been squatting next to him, had walked to the side and was ready to go down the overpass. Carrying the guitar on his back, Ajin was ready to follow Zheng Tan all the way. Anyway, he did not have an absolute destination now. Moreover, he was very curious about Zheng Tan's address. Where did this cat live? What kind of place did it live in? Why did it come here alone? Zheng Tan knew that Ajin was following him, but he did not pay attention to him. When passing by a stall selling food, Ajin stopped Zheng Tan. Black Charcoal, I'll treat you to chicken fillet. Ajin remembered that this cat seemed to have a wide range of food. This was also a way to express his gratitude. It was rare to see Zheng Tan alone. In the past, when Ajin saw Zheng Tan was with Celestine and Yi Hao, so Ajin did not dare to interrupt. Speaking of meat, Zheng Tan was indeed a little hungry now. Anyway, he was not in a hurry. There was still half an hour before little Pomelo's school ended, so it was not too late to go back after eating. Seeing that Zheng Tan had stopped, Ajin knew that this cat should have agreed, so he happily walked to the stall. 2 servings. Before he finished speaking, Ajin froze. He dug in his pockets and patted his trouser pockets. After searching for a long time, he looked at Zheng Tan with a depressed face. Black Charcoal, have you seen my wallet and phone? Zheng Tan. Idiot! You don't even know that your phone and wallet have been stolen. On the other side, on the overpass, after Zheng Tan and Ajin left, the old man did not play the arrow anymore. He just sat there quietly with his eyes closed, returning to his previous state. It was not until the sun set that the old man folded the low stool and put it in the wooden box with money. The wooden box was not big, but it was just enough to accommodate the folded low stool. The old man untied the big black umbrella tied to the railing and tidied up everything unhurriedly. Every movement was not fast but very smooth. The people around were not surprised. If someone repeated the same thing every day, day after day, he could also do this. For a blind person, there was no difference between day and night, but the old man was very regular every day. He appeared with the morning sun and disappeared with the evening sun. Moreover, his position on the overpass was always fixed. No vendor who came to set up a stall on the overpass would take his place. There would even be an empty space around him. When there were many vendors, even if other places were crowded, there would be an empty space around the old man. If there were new vendors, they would be told by other vendors not to take up the space there. Moreover, after the old man left, the vendors on the overpass would pack up and leave as soon as possible even if their business was good. They had to change places to continue their business. If one day they came to the overpass and did not see the old man, they would not set up a stall there. Instead, they would choose to sell in other places until the old man appeared on the overpass again. This was a rule that the vendors on the overpass had learned for a long time. When the blind old man was there, no one would come to the overpass to drive them away. This was one of the reasons why everyone treated the blind old man with a special attitude. As for the other reason, these vendors had only heard about it. They had not seen it with their own eyes, so they could not make a conclusion. In any case, they would never offend the blind old man. Sometimes they would give some fruits or other food to the blind old man. When they gave it to the blind old man, they did not look like they were giving alms. Instead, they were very careful. The old man held his cane and walked on the sidewalk unhurriedly. His pair of turbid black and white eyes did not open. If they were open, it would probably scare some people. The sky quickly darkened and the neon lights flashed. People who were ready to start their nightlife walked past the old man, chatting and laughing. They looked at the old man with sympathy and disdain. This was not directed at the old man, but at a blind person like the old man. Suddenly, a person rushed from behind, snatched the wooden box from the old man's hand, and ran away. This person walked past the overpass in the evening and saw the money in the old man's wooden box. At the time there were too many people, so he did not take action. He did not care because he had more fat prey. Now that he saw it, it would be a waste if he did not take it. After all, there were a few hundred yuan inside. When the people around the old man saw this, most of them did not want to meddle. Some hot-blooded youths wanted to intervene, but in the blink of an eye, the person who snatched the box disappeared into the crowd. They could only sympathize with the blind old man. Unlike the people around him, the old man's face was very calm. He did not show any anger or sadness because the box was snatched. He only paused when the box was snatched, and then continued to walk forward, as if he did not hear the discussion around him. After walking for a while, he turned into a narrow and long alley with few lights. The noise of the city at night seemed to suddenly disappear. It was like a different world from the bustling street outside the alley. The old man still walked forward unhurriedly. Not far ahead, there was a person sitting next to him. After seeing the old man, that person immediately got up and rushed over, kneeling in front of the old man. This person was the one who snatched the old man's wooden box. At the moment, he looked very embarrassed. He was beaten black and blue, and there were probably other injuries on his body. After kneeling in front of the old man, he lifted the old man's wooden box with both hands. He was shaking like a sieve, and even his voice was trembling badly. Little newcomer. I don't know. The old man did not stop because of the person in front of him. His face was still calm, and he did not say a word. He reached out to take the box and continued to walk forward, leaving the person who was kneeling on the ground and had not finished speaking.